This meeting will now come to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Carwick?
Here.
Vice Mayor Edwards?
Here.
Councilmember Binsbacher?
Here.
Councilmember Lieutenant?
Who?
Councilmember Lieutenant?
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Hunt?
Here.
And Councilmember Dunn.
Here.
Good evening and welcome to the Peoria City Council special meeting of August 17th, 2021. Tonight, we will begin a study session series to examine the impacts of growth. And it is very timely as we have just received our census figures back from the United States government. And it is reiterating something that we all know very well in the city of Peoria, and that is we are growing. We are growing and we are growing fast. Those numbers show that we have grown 27% since the last census. And so this is very important, very timely for us to talk about growth, and we're going to talk about it in a lot of different ways, a lot of different subjects. It is important to note that even though our city is divided into districts for the purpose of voting, as an entire body, we deliberate and vote on items that impact the entire city of Peoria. And so for that reason, it is very important that we are all equally informed and concerned about our ability to deal with the challenges of growth in our city. So with that, tonight's growth management study session topic is law enforcement. And I will turn it over to City Manager Jeff Tyne to begin.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for this opportunity to really go into more drilled down discussion on our key operations. And I think as the Mayor has mentioned, here in 2021, here in Peoria, any discussion really has to come through the lens of continued growth. And that's growth not only as we grow in the age and the maturation of our community, but as the Mayor has mentioned as well in the size and population. And so for perspective to the Mayor's percentage increase, U.S. Census just announced the city's population at ... 191,000. With this in mind, we planned a series of study sessions really on growth, to how we intend to serve an evolving Peoria. And so this will include tonight's discussion on law enforcement operations. And we are extremely fortunate to have a great story here because of the hard work of our police department staff, through the leadership of Chief Miller and his command staff, through the continued support of all of you here in the City Council, we have seen amazing progress toward our goals. But now's the time to learn more about what is to come in this field. And for that, I'll pass this over to Chief Miller. Thank you.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to give you an overview of the Police Department. So tonight you're going to hear a little bit about status in terms of our staffing, redistricting, crime trends, and some other important information that I think you'll find very interesting. But before I begin, I really want to acknowledge our police department staff, both sworn and civilian, at every rank, at every position, because they really are the ones that are carrying the ball forward on making sure that our city is safe and that they are provided with the proper police services that our community is entitled to. Obviously, 2020 was an unprecedented year, and our staff adapted from every aspect. We kept our service levels very high. There were very few things that we could not attend or would not go to serve our public. And with this, all this was based on a foundation, was accomplished to a foundation of support from the mayor and council, support from city manager, deputy city managers, our community, and equally important to all those is the support amongst each other as an organization. So the overview that we're going to provide you all stems from growth, number one, and then some of the things that we have done since the Matrix report was issued back in 2018. That was a real deep drill down, as Jeff put it, of what the department was facing at the time. And when I came into my position as chief of police here in Peoria, I took note of all the suggestions that were made in there, and I made some pretty sweeping changes within the department. And Deputy Chief Doug Steele will talk about those in a moment. But all these came with the idea of being successful and trying the things that the matrix had suggested. And with that in mind, a lot of people don't like change, but we have found that through that change, we have actually been able to provide the service as I mentioned before. So with that, I will turn it over to Deputy Chief Steele.
Mayor and Council, I appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you today. Nothing more than I'd like to talk about how proud I am to be an officer with the City of Peoria and my experiences. But this presentation kind of is a dive down into the many facets of things that are going on in the agency and give you some overall ideas of how we responded to growth since 2018. As the Chief spoke just a moment ago on the matrix report, it was a strategic evaluation on how the growth of the police department should go in the future. And the matrix report provided a nice, strong foundation and areas of us to focus on. And in that, we had to take basically a look at every facet of the department and in which ways we could change the way we did business. And with that, three immediate strategies were identified, and those three strategies are outlined in yellow. And I'll break those down real quickly. Call diversion is an evaluation of the types of calls for service that a police department takes. And each community is distinct. What is important to Peoria may not be important to El Mirage or may not be important to Tempe, even though we're all in the valley. So it's important that the police department works with our elected officials, our city management, and our citizens on what we feel is important. And we're always evaluating how we're responding to calls for service and which way we prioritize our calls for service, everything from public outreach to actually responding for particular crimes. And so we created the Calls for Service Review Committee, and that's currently chaired by our Commander Bazayo, who along with his team are evaluating every type of call that comes into the police department and really evaluating how our resources are identifying and tackling those issues. It's been very effective. We have changed priorities in particular areas and therefore focusing police resources more effectively and efficiently. Another option was creating some more civilian type positions, and with that, the telephone reporting unit. The telephone reporting unit takes in calls by phone and tries to take those police reports. They're lower level type police reports, maybe a theft or small level with not a lot of information reference to a suspect. And those individuals take those reports, therefore not tying up a police officer. The police officer can now do more patrol functions. They also, working with our loss prevention officers, as loss prevention officers are submitting reports, they work with that. In addition, they handle review of any citizen that does a report online. That telephone report unit is actually evaluating and looking at that. So really taking those functions off police officers or our records clerks, and they're supporting that. And then increase the number of police service officers, our non-sworn uniformed individuals that can handle transportations, help with bookings, again, allowing the officer to get back on the road, on the streets. They're not stuck in the jail processing area as we're booking a subject into jail. They're able to do that. They also handle calls for service. If they're not in the booking process, they might be out taking an accident report or helping on those low-level crimes. So really evaluating how we're responding to those calls for service and then ultimately spreading them out in different parts of the department, and it was very effective. Schedule reconfiguration, that was the creation of a power squad, changing to double squad days when we are doubled up, which allows officers to do training, but optimizing what our coverage on the road is, and then making adjustments to our start times. Creation of the power squad was intended to spread out workload amongst the officers in a more equitable way, and we found that to be very effective. The goal of the Peoria Police Department is try to allow our officers a certain amount of time to be proactive, not being completely encumbered by calls for service, but allow them to make contact with the community, to basically look for proactive work. Peoria does so much more than just taking the calls for service. We're involved in so many things. And so whatever we can do to spread the workload more evenly allows those officers to spend those times doing that and to maintain our goal. And the creation of the Power Squad, in fact, was a very powerful tool in spreading that out. And then finally, geographic redistricting. This was to realign our beats and the number of beats we had in our particular areas, and in addition to making some slight changes in maybe where beat aligns. Peoria has some distinct problems in reference to geographics. We're a distinct city that we deal with both urban and rural problems in reference to how we're built and how we look. We're very large and spread out and up north and much more compact in urban environments down south, which has an impact on a variety of different things. but we're always looking on how to adjust that and also our workload in those particular areas. So those three things were our immediate response. Speaking of geographic problems, and something that we're always evaluating is our response times. This graph shows a depiction of three particular trend lines in reference to response. The Peoria Police Department is always looking for ways to reduce our response times on priority one calls for service. And historically, for the last 5+6 years, we've been pushing around the 7-minute mark, which is not something that we feel is an acceptable level. We want to always try to do better. But we're also evaluating us against other places around the country and also in the Valley. The bottom line is that Arizona Valley cities' response times for priority one. That is the average. There are cities in our Arizona Maricopa County area that have worse response times than 7 minutes, but we're trying to get to where we think is an acceptable average. And then the line right above that is benchmark cities. That is 30 law enforcement agencies around the country that we use as a benchmark for us to see how we're doing nationally. Not only are we looking at Arizona, but we're also looking nationally. When you're looking at benchmark cities, for example, Peoria on, as far as land size is double the average. So those cities aren't always dealing with the same things in reference to geographic problems that the city of Peoria. But our geographic redistricting, which took between 2018 and 2019, actually has shown a decrease in response times. We are getting better. Is it where we want to be? Not yet, but we're definitely working on getting better. Talk about crime trends. Not only are we responding or evaluating response times continuously, staffing continuously, we're also looking at crime trends. Positive thing in Peoria is our crime trends, if you break it down on a proportion of violent versus property crimes, our ratios are very, very solid. We average 90-10 as about average. So for every 9 property calls, there would be 1 violent crime, property crime versus violent. So our UCR stats is predominantly the crime in Peoria is in property in nature, not violent in nature. So that is a very, very positive trend and has been consistent now for 5 years. There has been slight changes, a tick up and down. For the most part, it's been very consistent. This next slide is a breakdown of UCR Part 1 crimes in reference to violent and property crimes. We're looking at particular trends, trying to identify problems, and patrol in general is always looking for ways to basically attack crime as it's taking place proactively, and in which ways we can go ahead and address that. Your violent crime is also being evaluated, but violent crime is often much more difficult to address. And even though we have seen some changes in violent crime, the areas that we're seeing, we've kind of identified some specific trends. One would be an issue, for example, a change to how reports are done in reference to domestic violence aggravated assault. And they used to be coded as a simple assault, a misdemeanor crime. Over the years, they've changed to a felony. That has an impact. Social movements, the Me Too movement on reporting sexual assault, extremely important. We want victims to come forward. We want them to make sure they're comfortable talking to their police department. But in that, we have seen an increase in sexual assault reports. That doesn't mean we have a huge increase in stranger sexual assaults, so they're going out and doing serial sexual assaults. That's not the case. That's not what Peoria has seen. But definitely areas that we're always evaluating, trying to identify what concerns me and how can we address those concerns. And this gives you an overall trend. One other major positive note, if you look from 2016 through 2020, it's a downward trend. Our crime continues to drop on a regular basis, and so we're very, very proud of that. To put it also in perspective, just to be aware of, 2020 was an odd year for everybody, and crime was affected also equally. We're not really sure what 2021 is going to look like, but my guess is going to be more in line with 2019. 2020 is going to be the anomaly. Another way to evaluate and to the point of population and how population affects the police department, we're also looking at our UCR crimes per 1,000 residents. It's important to see how we're trending, how we trend in the valley, and what we look like. Again, consistently Peoria is showing a decrease, 2020 being an anomaly, but we have seen a decrease. Even though our population is increasing, we're maintaining crime levels at a level, so it actually is showing that we're reducing crime per 1,000 residents, which as a police department we're extremely proud of. How do we compare in reference to crime per 1,000 residents? This is an evaluation against the rest of the valley. Crime trends evaluating against the country is a little bit more difficult, but it's at least when you're looking at Maricopa County or valley benchmark cities, this gives us some more perspective on where Peoria ranks in the valley. When you look at our violent crime, which is the bottom number, we average slightly above 2 per 1,000, and it really at the average, as far as the valley cities, we are pretty much right there with the rest of the valley, and our trends are relatively consistent. We have not jumped significantly statistically up or down in that area, and has been consistent for the most part over the last 5 years, well, at least since 2017. However, contrary to that, if you look at our property crimes, we've had a significant decrease in impact on our property crimes and continue to be better than the valley, in my opinion, in reference to property crimes in the city of Peoria. Lots of reasons why. We focus heavily on those. We've tried predictive routes. We've done all kinds of programs and trying to address that. Again, doesn't mean that any part or type of crime is less important than the other. It's just we can more effectively do programming on those types of crimes versus violent crime, which is very difficult to predict, especially when you're talking about domestic violence and other types of issues. Community service programs. This is only a portion of the things that Peoria Police Department does outside of answering calls for service and patrolling neighborhoods. There's a myriad of programs up there. Many of them I'm extremely proud of, and a lot of them you have been part of as mayor and council, have been at these events. Everything from the GAIN event to Park Fest, which we're very much involved with City Council and Park Fest. We presented the CIT Emerald program and our outreach programs with Human Services just a few months ago. Our motorcycle safety class is a benchmark in the state of Arizona. GOHS, the Governor Office of Highway Safety, uses us as an example. Special Olympics, something I'm very, very fond of. I've sat on the board, and I'm a coach, and I am a unified partner with Special Olympic athletes. So, and there's more officers than just me involved in that, but just there's so many things going on. I don't want to discount all the stuff that's going on with the Peoria Police Department outside of just answering calls to service and being in the community in different ways. Vacancy management. This is a difficult topic to talk about in the sense of this is an unbelievably difficult moving target to pinpoint and identify what is going on in the police department. In reference to vacancies, sworn positions, and civilian, it's difficult for us to say, hey, today we're at this staffing level, because in a period of a week or two, it will change, and it consistently changes. It's continuously monitored. We receive, as far as executive staff, a weekly report on where our staffing sits. And this is an issue in law enforcement from our perspective and around the entire valley and across the entire nation. And I'll show you a comparison slide where Peoria PD sits against other valley cities here in a moment. Temporary assignments are important for us to understand. There's once an officer or a recruit is hired, or a lateral officer, it takes time for them to go through the process, which I know all of you are aware of. And so we're not only looking at, hey, how many positions do we have fill, what's the time that in order for them to get on the streets or have an impact on the organization. And that varies depending on their experience and the process that they're currently in. And that's why systems like overhires, we've requested overhires for positions to help with attrition, retirements, the time it takes to bring an officer onto the road. That is an extremely important program that council's been very much supportive of in the city, which I can't stress enough on how much that has helped us. Unfortunately, today, at this point in time, we're behind a little, and we do have vacancies, so we're not in the overhire process, but it has happened in the past. Our civilian vacancies, candidates are currently in the background, and recruitments on every one of our positions is continuing ongoing. Successes in this particular area, when the matrix report came in, I know one of the main focuses was our communications section. Our communications section was extremely understaffed. There was forced overtime on a regular basis in order to maintain staffing, and I'm very proud to say at 94% staffing, we are much healthier today than we were a few years ago. The council has supported, city management has supported a complete cultural change in our communications department, not only with hiring, but also completely redoing the communications section. If you haven't had a chance to be there, please go check it out. It's pretty impressive, and I believe that our communications staff has knocked it out of the park. Current also areas that were not full at the time of the matrix report, the department has spent much time on trying to fill. Our community relations, recruitment staff has grown. Victim advocate, was currently staffed until like this week. Crime analyst is fully staffed, and our business system analysts all have been huge assets for the growth of the department and program that goes on within the department. Why are people leaving? Something we're also continuing evaluating and looking at with the Human Resources Department. Really, are people not happy? Is Peoria PD, not a premier law enforcement agent? We're always questions we should be asking ourselves, and what can we do better? The positive thing, these are the last 3 years of why people left, and there isn't really a trend where Peoria is not the place. Peoria is an exceptional police department to work for. Most of our individuals that have moved on are moving for positive reasons, retirement. Career changes, there have been a few people that said, hey, we're going to go in a different direction, or I'm moving to a different state. And external promotions. There is very few police departments in the West Valley does not have a command level officer that isn't from the city of Peoria. Surprise, Goodyear, El Mirage, Buckeye, all have command staff members that came from the Peoria Police Department. So something to be very, very proud of. And probably our second reason for people leaving is because they're not necessarily meeting the training guidelines or probation guidelines that we want for them to be a police officer in Peoria. Our standards are high and should be high, and therefore they're not passing that section. So I can't think of one in the last 3 years that someone has said, hey, we're not happy for a particular reason. So that's a positive thing. I talked about sworn vacancy rates, which I said that this is an issue and something that does concern us, and we continue to evaluate. We had a 2-hour meeting today on how to be creative and creative ways to help with recruitment. This is the sworn vacancy rate in police departments across the valley. Mind you, Phoenix and Scottsdale are not up there. Also, please note, Goodyear Police Department shows an 18% vacancy rate. They had 19 new FTEs authorized July 1, so it takes time to fill that, so it's not fair. I would tell you from 6 to 10% is probably the average and has continued to be the average for some time. The Peoria Police Department, 6%, but it could be 5% in a month, or it could be, it's such a fluctuating number. What's concerning about when you look at this, at this point, a point in time when we did this, this accounted, just what you see here, accounted for 205 open sworn police officer vacancies in the valley. If you add Phoenix and you add Scottsdale to this, I would conservatively say there's over 500 open positions for police officers. It's extremely competitive to get a police officer to come and get hired, and something that we're trying to be creative in how we're going to get police officers into the city of Peoria. So definitely an area of concern and something that we're looking at. Recruitment and hiring and things that we've done, to give you an example or an idea. Since basically November of 2019, we had 467 applications. 6% of those applications were actually made it through the hiring process. It's extremely competitive, and it's also extremely critical that we hire the right people. The department holds recruit testing throughout the year, and then lateral applications for those individuals that are already sworn here in Arizona or across the state or country. We take those applications all the time. Leveraging social media and how we can get out our message out better. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn are all social media platforms that the Peoria Police Department is currently recruiting at. We just did some targeted advertisement with Facebook. It was the last 2 weeks, geographically selecting areas, California, Illinois, Oregon, Washington. Our first week, we had 19,000 people look at our advertisement, and we know that they've touched the advertisement. Now, does that turn into police officers in Peoria? Not yet, but we're hoping that we'll have that impact. I think today the chief and I were told it was 30,000 as of week 2. So we're getting a lot of looks. Currently evaluating things that the police department's looking on how to bring officers into our valley, or to our city, hosting valley-wide recruitment days. That is kind of an older school way of doing it, but the idea of maybe tackling that a different way, advertising specific areas and then going out to them. A new recruitment video, we are currently trying to look at how do we humanize police officers, why is Peoria the place, and really want to tell the story why you want to work at Peoria. I had the benefit in my career, which albeit a while ago when I started, I got to choose between Peoria and Glendale. And I'll be honest with you, I lived in Glendale. I was an explorer with Glendale. I was a reserve police officer with Glendale, and I chose Peoria. Why? Because you guys made me feel like I was family. And so telling that story, I think, is super important. And so we're looking at telling that story in video. Testimonial advertisement, which I just did. Hopefully people on Channel 11 hear that working at the police department in Peoria, we feel supported, we feel like family. But trying to do lateral police officers and why did you come here? QR code is, if anybody that has been at a restaurant since COVID, you have a QR code on your table. That's how you get your menu. We're thinking about doing the exact same thing with recruitment, putting a QR code everywhere. We tried to get them on fire trucks. I just don't think they're going to allow us. But if we were able to do that, they would go right to a page, right to a video, right to an explanation on how you can be a member of the Peoria Police Department. We're looking at out-of-state recruitment travel. And can we send a team, rather than you coming to Peoria, let's go to you and make it easy for you, because it takes a lot of time and money and effort to fly out to Peoria to come test for our organization if you happen to be in another state. Why don't we go out to them? So these are all things we're looking at. And finally, the last one, I'll let Sir City Manager, if you
I
add to
appreciate
one.
that. Thank you, Chief Steele. As I kind of reviewed this, I thought, well, this is one I probably should chime in on, and that is in recognition of, as Chief Steele showed, really a sobering labor market environment for specific positions, police recruits, lateral officers, but also some other positions that we see in the city that are hard to fill right now due to different conditions and economic aspects. As a result of that, what we would like to do, and we wanted to get the council's reaction to this, is a concept of a hiring incentive, a recruitment incentive in the form of a sign-in or sign-on bonus that would be provided for very specific positions and for a finite amount of time to see if that can assist us as we get through this current condition. So with that, we just wanted to get kind of a reaction from all of you, if you would be receptive to that.
Council, do you have any comments? Councilmember Patena?
Thank you, Mayor. Jeff, are you aware of any other cities that are offering incentives or signing bonuses?
Mayor and Councilmember Patena, yes, we are aware of, specifically within the law enforcement, it is more advertised, and we can speak to some of that. It is now starting to be talked about in broader context as well. I've not seen hard numbers outside of law enforcement yet, but we think that is imminent.
Councilmember Dunn?
So on the statistics that you put on, it showed 2020 down. Is that mainly because of COVID, do you think, or?
I believe that COVID did have an impact on property crimes. People were home. Burglaries dropped significantly, or your residential burglaries are going to drop. So there was some significant drops in a lot of those. Businesses weren't open, you don't have shopliftings, you know, all of that absolutely would have an impact. Property crimes were still trending down today, so I do believe we're still trending down on that. I just don't think that 2020 is a true assessment of where we're probably really at. I think it was probably a larger drop than we would have normally expected.
Do you anticipate in 2021, I know there's been quite a few studies done as far as people being in mental health crisis because of lockdowns and other things associated with COVID. Do you anticipate seeing a spike up?
In reference to property crimes, ma'am?
Any
Or
type of crimes?
That's difficult, and to jump to necessarily the nexus that a mental health issue is generally has an effect on crime is difficult. I think that we try to, in the Peoria, address mental health issues in a service-first standpoint, and we've done everything we can not to criminalize that type of issue. I can tell you it happens, we see it, but I can't tell you that necessarily that has a direct correlation with the violent crime or property crimes that we're seeing. We do address people in crisis and with either service first, and should enforcement happen, it's normally lower level issues like livabilities, which we talked about previously, trespassing, littering, those types of things, and we'll basically address cases that way, hoping that they'll take a service or a diversion rather than going down the criminal path. Again, homelessness from Peoria's perspective is not a crime. It's a symptom, or you're a patient. So for all that, like I said, I don't feel comfortable making that leap, but mental health continues to be an issue.
Yeah, no, I wasn't talking about, homelessness per se, or I'm just talking about some of the violent crimes that it's pretty evident that there's some problems going on. So.
Domestic violence, with everybody being home, definitely was on the rise, and so there's definitely an increase in domestic violence. Aggravated assaults we talked about, that's an obstructed breathing. Strangulation is what changed, the county attorney changed its protocols, which has an impact on how we're charging crimes, therefore has an impact on your crime numbers. Those used to be coded a different way. So domestic violence is a difficult issue, and we did see increases in domestic violence with COVID. People are in their house cooped up, and, you know, if the relationship's not healthy, that's stress. All those things are stressors. So whether or not COVID had a direct impact on violent crime in general, again, that's a difficult leap, but we did see some changes in those areas.
And I have one last question. So I know we're looking to recruit the police officers, but what about some of the other positions, you know, like in the management roles, like sergeants and detectives?
Yes, and then I can go on, that's a good question and segue to the next slide, staffing evaluations. And currently, we're always evaluating staffing. That's a continuous process and evaluating every aspect. And yes, current needs are trending that our detective bureau is an area that actually desperately needs help. And so our early projections that we will, when it comes to budget, that will be a higher priority list. It includes also a lot of areas. Our property and evidence is an area that was that's really not had an impact with growth. The police department and our sworn officers on the road have increased, and we've done a nice job supporting that. But there are areas, property and evidence is one. Another area would be our forensics. When you're talking about computer forensics and that time, we've seen a gigantic increase in the amount of phones and computers, and everybody today carries around a computer with them. It's their phone, but all those things now have to be forensically evaluated. And so there's lots of things I can give you specifics on those things, but definitely areas of support staff that are a high priority for us that we really are trying to focus on this budget cycle. That we'll be focusing on.
So
And I just hit the button,
before we
so-
move on,
So-
let's go back to the conversation about hiring incentives. And Councilmember Binsbacher, did you have something you wanted to say?
Thank you, Mary.
Along those lines?
In response to that question, yes. So the city manager posed the question about how, you know, if the council's open to hiring bonuses and that kind of thing. And so in response to that, first of all, I thank you very much for this presentation. This is a great presentation, very good information. It kind of brings it all together. And I like what I'm hearing in that the tools are in place, the ability to overhire. The positions are there. They're just vacant positions. We're dealing with sort of a national issue, crisis, if you will, in law enforcement and trying to maintain our standards and fill those positions. I love what you said about getting creative in how we fill these positions, and I think it's going to take all of us on board to find ways to fill these vacancies and use the tools that we have in place to fill these vacancies. I would definitely be open to supporting hiring bonuses, incentives to bring people in. And maybe that's something on a trial basis, because is it working? We don't know until we try it. It sounds great, but I wouldn't necessarily want to put it out there indefinitely initially. But I really support, like the idea of trying it and taking that step. Also going to other cities, and again, we're all kind of fighting for the same candidates, but that's all part of getting creative and allowing you to, you know, really kind of take ownership of that recruitment process and going out there. So all of these things in combination and working together, I think, is really important, and telling the story about the quality of life, the quality of the department, and, you know, what it means to work for a department like Peoria's police department. So all of these things working together, I love what I'm hearing and definitely support exploring that hiring incentive.
Thank you. Councilmember Hunt?
What were you thinking? I'm sorry. In terms of a hiring bonus, when would that be actually the check written for the person? At what point in their?
Right, Mayor, Council, and Councilmember Hunt. So the concept that is brought forward as we've worked with our police department and our human resources department is to have something that would be separated probably 50% at sign-in and 50% after a specific period of time that you continue to stay. So something along that where there would be, for those that are eligible, there would be a certain amount that is identified, and then if you are staying within the allotted period of time, you would receive the other 50%.
So someone applies, but then it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be hired even into the training part. So when they're hired, they would receive 50%. I heard a commercial on the radio today that, I don't know if it was a plumbing company or air conditioning or something, that said there was a bonus to be awarded at 90 days of work, their 90-day anniversary. I thought that's pretty good, because otherwise you go and apply and you work a week and you get this bonus. So that just made me think about at what point. So I'm sure you guys would be smart about that.
We'll attempt to. That's exactly the concept that we're bringing forward to you.
Okay.
May I interject here at this point? So one of the things that we do in our recruiting process, as far as testing and following through with our applicants or candidates, is that we have a very robust appearance of our staff in command, supervisors at every level of the testing process, number one. Number two is I meet with every person that we hire on our police department. I personally meet with them. And it gives me an opportunity to get to know them a little bit more, and it gives them an opportunity to get to know me and our city through me a little bit more. One of the things that I'm hearing continually, and that is the lack of support from the cities that they're coming from. And they cite the very obvious things that you can see and see on TV or listen to on a radio or podcast. They're very frustrated. One of the things that we really emphasize here is this community support, is the elected support, and how we support each other. That is huge, and you cannot put a price tag on that. And that's something that, again, I hear it over and over and over again. So while there's a change of venue for the person that wants to change agencies, the main reason is they want to come to a place where they're appreciated, where they can do the work that they've been trained to do, where they can serve the public and get out in the community. I hear that over and over again. And I really want to convey that to you, because I cannot stress enough how important it is to have your continued support throughout the things that we do. A city of our size and the services that we all provide, every department, is huge. And again, it's all based on the support that we get from you and our communities. So I just wanted to really emphasize that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for saying that, Chief. And I want to reemphasize that we do 100% support our first responders, our police department. You know, I pulled some of our budget numbers, and I'm looking at this operating budget comparing 2017 and then year over year to 2020, and our operating budget just for police has grown $10 million in that period of time. So us being able to buy the cars that are necessary and buy the equipment that is necessary is part of, we hope, what makes you understand how much we do support and want to keep you safe every single day, and how much we appreciate you being in the community and incorporating community policing into the culture of our police department. And what you said about mental illness, that is so the Peoria way, you know, making sure that we talk about empathy first and that we look at each individual individually. You know, we're not talking about blanketing large areas with crimes. We're talking about saying to each person, what is your issue and what can we do to help you first? And I so appreciate that, and it really changes who we are as a city. So as much as you want people to come here because you are supported, we feel the same way back to you. It just makes Peoria still have that small town feel, and we want to do whatever we can to make you fully staffed, to make sure that all of your departments have everyone and everything that they need. I am definitely in favor of whatever incentives we need to do to make sure that we can get the best officers here. I also appreciate you taking the time to make sure that they are the right person. We cannot just hurry up hiring so that we don't have any vacancies. We need to make sure that we're hiring the right people from the right places that have a culture that they either want to assimilate well into the city of Peoria's culture, or they want to better themselves. Maybe we can help them. But in any case, I do want you to know how much we support you, and I do want you to know that we want to put any policies in place that we can to make your job easier, better, more efficient, more effective.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. So are we finished with this presentation? Or we
Yes,
missed
I
that
should
last
say
slide,
that-
kind
That
of.
does conclude our presentation. Really appreciate the feedback, and we'll plan on continuing this series with a number of other areas, of course, fire and medical, parks, water, and the like. So thank you for all of the feedback.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for
Thank
your
you all.
presentation. It was great. All right. And, all right, with that, we are adjourned until our 6 PM meeting.
The Mayor and City Council welcome you to the Peoria City Council meeting. As a courtesy to others, please silence all phones. If you would like to address an issue that is on the agenda, or if you would like to speak to the council regarding a non-agenda item, please complete a speaker request form, which can be found in the front lobby of the Peoria City Council chambers or in the tray to the left of the speaker's podium. Please place the completed speaker request form in the second tray to the left of the speaker's podium labeled Request to Speak. All speakers will have 3 minutes to complete their comments. A countdown clock is easily visible on the left side of the wall behind the City Council dais. Only items listed on the agenda may be addressed by the Council. Since items presented as part of a speaker's request have not been listed on the agenda, and due to the requirements of open meeting laws, the Council will be unable to respond to items presented as part of the speaker's request. However, please be aware that your comments will be noted. The speaker's name will be called to speak at the appropriate time, in the order that the forms were received. Thank you for your interest and participation in the Peoria City Council meeting.
Peoria City Council meeting will now come to order. Please rise for a moment of quiet reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Patena.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will please call the roll.
Mayor Carla,
Here.
Vice Mayor Edwards,
Here.
Councilmember Binswanger,
Here.
Councilmember Patena,
Here.
Councilmember Hunt,
Here.
and Councilmember Dunn.
Here.
Good evening and welcome to the Peoria City Council meeting of August 17th, 2021. We will now move to an exciting occasion that occurs at our City Council meeting at the end of summer break every year. We get to meet our new Youth Council liaisons. The City of Peoria was the first Arizona city to implement the Youth Council Liaison Program in 2013, which allows 2 high school-aged students the opportunity to serve a 1-year ex officio term on Peoria City Council. In these positions, the council liaisons sit at the dais along with mayor and council as we discuss the matters that impact our community. Liaisons receive council agendas in advance with the opportunity to ask questions of department leaders prior to public meetings. Importantly, the non-voting liaisons may join in the debate and discussion that helps to shape the city council vote. The liaisons will then report to the city's Youth Advisory Board regarding key issues. At this time, I would like to invite Presiding Municipal Judge George Enicknost to the floor, along with the Council Youth Liaisons, Elizabeth Fierro and Savannah Rodriguez, to be sworn in.
Carlin, members of the council, Mr. Tyne, Ms. Hickman, department heads, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity for the court to participate in this ceremony today. Good evening to you. I might ask you to raise your right hands. I'm going to administer the oath. I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution
the Constitution
of the United States
of the United States
and the laws
and the laws
and the Constitution
and the Constitution
of the state of Arizona.
of the state of Arizona,
And I will faithfully
and I will faithfully
perform the duties
perform the duties
of the office
of the office
of Council Youth Liaison
of Council Youth Liaison
for the city of Peoria,
for the city of Peoria
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Mayor, council, members of the public, these are your council youth liaison, Ms. Elizabeth Fierro and Ms. Savannah Rodriguez. Let's give them a hand.
Thank you. We will now take a short 5-minute break so they can be seated in their seats. Thank you. We will now reconvene. Welcome back to the Peoria City Council meeting and our full dais. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mayor Cartwright,
Here.
Vice Mayor Edwards,
Here.
Councilmember Binsbacher,
Here.
Councilmember Patena,
Here.
Councilmember Hunt,
Here.
Councilmember Dunn,
Here?
Youth Liaison Fierro,
Here.
and Youth Liaison Rodriguez.
Here.
Thank you. And we are very glad to have you here. So we will begin with presentations this evening, and the first item is recognition of newly appointed board and commission members. And for this, I will turn it over to Councilmember Patena, who is on the Council Subcommittee for Boards and Commissions.
Thank you, Mayor. Please turn your attention to the screen for a short video.
The City of Peoria is proud to have 21 different boards and commissions, ranging from arts and culture to economic development to planning and zoning. They're made up of residents and business leaders who bring a wealth of personal and professional experience and who generously volunteer their time, energy, and wisdom to our community. These members meet on a regular basis, deliberating and collaborating on various projects and issues of importance for the benefit of all Peoria residents. In the past few years, they have had a direct role in influencing meaningful projects like the Veterans Memorial expansion, multiple public art installations, accessible park amenities, and our Youth Advisory Board even collaborated with the State Attorney General's office to team up in the fight against tobacco sales to minors. As we welcome new volunteers into this exceptional group of people, I want you to know how much we appreciate your willingness to share your time and expertise with our city. On behalf of the City of Peoria and the Peoria City Council, I want to express our gratitude and appreciation. Your service makes a difference. It's an honor to have you working alongside us as we shape our finest future.
Due to necessary changes put in place to enable social distancing, we have modified our tradition of personally recognizing new board and commission members at a council meeting. Instead, new members are invited to send a picture of themselves holding their certificate so we can recognize them and celebrate their service to the city. The following newly appointed board members have accepted their certificates of appointment by sending in a picture of themselves holding their certificates to be shown in the PowerPoint presentation. First one we have is Vedant Tooley, Youth Advisory Board. Savita Devine, Youth Advisory Board. And Akshahathram Vamana, Youth Advisory Board. Let's give them a hand.
All right, the next item on the agenda is a proclamation recognizing August as Drowning Impact Awareness Month. In Arizona, we can never take for granted this very important issue. And as you can see, we are all wearing purple, and Peoria City Hall will be lit purple all week long, in honor of this very important issue. And so now I will read a formal proclamation. So give me just a moment here. Whereas Arizona's future prosperity depends upon the long-term health, safety, and well-being of the nearly 2 million children and teens in our state. And whereas drowning is a top cause of injury and death for children and teens in Arizona, affecting not only the victims, but also families, emergency personnel, and our society as a whole. And whereas child drownings are nearly 100% preventable, including drownings, which are classified as maltreatment and make up an average of 1 in 5 cases in Arizona. And whereas research-proven strategies can save lives, including constant and capable supervision, restricting access to water, use of life jackets, swimming lessons for adults and children at the appropriate age, rapid emergency response, including CPR, and safe, stable, and nurturing relationships and communities to break the cycle of maltreatment. And whereas awareness of this problem is just the first step, evidence-based programs to bring these strategies to families is the best way to save lives. And whereas during the month of August, the Drowning Prevention Coalition of Arizona, in collaboration with Phoenix Children's Hospital, state and local governments, community organizations, and private citizens, will be engaging communities throughout Arizona in a coordinated and comprehensive response. Now, therefore, I, Kathy Carlett, Mayor of the City of Peoria, do hereby proclaim August 2021 as Drowning Impact Awareness Month, and urge all communities and citizens of Arizona to participate in efforts to reduce drowning risk, strengthen families, and protect children and teens. And with that, I would like to invite Christian Peck, Recreation Coordinator, to the podium to accept the proclamation and to say a few remarks.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I do appreciate you guys making or declaring August as Drowning Impact Awareness Month. You guys have always shown aquatics by helping support with swim lessons, providing scholarships for swim lessons, and also participating in our annual polar plunge. So you have shown the community and us that you appreciate the water safety messaging and also the drowning prevention and making it an importance. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for all that you do. Okay, the next two items are about outstanding dedication. High schools in our city have consistently managed to make us proud, and tonight we have two recognitions for Liberty High School. And I would like to invite Vice Mayor Edwards to the floor. And I am going to read a proclamation or two. And I am going to begin. Whereas the Mayor and Council of the City of Peoria recognize 2021 Liberty High School golfer Maddie Frick for her outstanding dedication and effort in becoming the Division I state golf champion. And whereas Maddie Frick is the first individual state golf title holder in school history, and whereas Maddie Frick led the Liberty Lions golf team to a 5th place finish in the state golf tournament, and whereas Maddie Frick went on to finish in the top 2 in the 2021 National High School Golf Invitational, finishing 1 stroke behind the eventual champion, 1 stroke. Whereas Maddie Frick competed with honor, dedication, and pride throughout the season. And whereas high school sports develops in athletes confidence, leadership, and respect for self and others, traits that translate beyond high school. And whereas the City of Peoria and the entire community are proud of Liberty Lions golfer Maddie Frick for her achievements in the field and in the community. Now, therefore, I, Kathy Carlett, Mayor of the City of Peoria in the state of Arizona, do hereby proclaim August 17th, 2021 as Maddie Frick Peoria Liberty Lions State Golf Champion Day.
Thank you, Mayor. What an accomplishment. What a great job. Do you want to say something? Sure. You're on television. You get to say something.
I guess I just want to say thank you for everything. This has been an incredible journey that I honestly could not have ever dreamed of. Thank you to everyone who has loved and supported me along the way. Thank you to my parents. Thank you to my grandparents. Thank you to my coaches. Thank you, Coach Pooler, for everything you have done for me. I know I was a bit of a pain at state, so thanks for helping me along with that. Thank you, Council, for this amazing day and everything you said. It means a lot, so thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. And while you're teeing up for the next one, I just wanted to recognize Dr. Jason Reynolds, the school superintendent for PUSD, is in the audience. And we also have Chief Student Service Officer Carter Davison. So thank you guys for attending tonight.
And I don't know if anyone's noticed, but there is a baseball team in our audience.
So if you guys want to come on up, yeah, you guys can come up. You can bring your coaches.
As you're making your way up, I am going to read a proclamation, because what more could you want? Whereas the mayor and council of the city of Peoria recognize the 2021 Liberty High School baseball team for their outstanding dedication and effort in becoming the 6A state baseball champions. And whereas Coach Chris Raymond led the program to its 3rd state title, and whereas Coach Raymond and the Liberty Lions ball players have competed for the high school state championship 2 times in the past 3 seasons, and whereas the Liberty Lions baseball team competed with honor, dedication, and pride throughout the season, and whereas high school sports develops in players confidence, leadership, and respect for self and others, traits that translate beyond high school. And whereas the city of Peoria and the entire community are proud of the Liberty Lions baseball program and their achievements on the field and in the community. Now, therefore, I, Kathy Carlett, Mayor of the City of Peoria and the State of Arizona, do hereby proclaim August 17th, 2021 as Peoria Liberty Lions State Baseball Champion Day.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm not going to have everybody introduce themselves, but I will ask that the Liberty High School Athletic Director, Aaron, say a few words.
Is it on? All right, I get a little excited on the microphone sometimes. So I'll try to tame it down a little bit from our assembly last week. But my 43-minute speech, I'm going to cut it back a little bit. I'm going to talk a little bit about these young men. They started off the season 2-0, and then we got into region play pretty quick, and we dropped 3 straight. And for those of you who don't know, our region's pretty tough. And so we have a talented team, and Coach brought them together, and as all good coaches do, got them to focus. And he said, we're going to be one day better, every day, one day better. And each day they did get better, and they won 19 straight. And they went through the rest of the season without losing a game, averaging every win by 10 runs. They had hitting, pitching, fielding, they had it all. And what was great, when they got to the state final game, they shut them out and run rolled them in the 5th inning, 10-0, and that hadn't been done in a long time. I will tell you that I've been at Liberty since it's opened. We've had a lot of great baseball teams. This one is so exceptional. I believe this is the best one we've had out of 3 state title teams, 2 runner-ups. When they finished the year, they were the first Liberty team ever to be ranked in the nation. They were number 10 by Max Preps and number 6 by Baseball America. That is saying something. I know a lot of you are familiar with Centennial football. They're okay. I get it. They've never been that high in the national rankings. Our Liberty baseball team did it. And so I want you to understand that this isn't just a good team that had a good run. This is an exceptional team of exceptional students with exceptional coaching that put it all together. And so give it up to my young men.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you guys so much. Thank you again, Mayor.
Thank you guys for making Peoria proud. Coach, that was very inspirational. One day better. I think that's a good lesson for all of us. Thank you so much. Good job.
City of Peoria is hiring.
All right. We will now move on to the consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine or have been previously reviewed and/or discussed by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. If the presiding officer receives a timely notice of a request for removal, an item may be removed from the consent agenda for consideration on the regular agenda. Additionally, tonight's consent agenda includes items that are posted as a public hearing. If there is any member of the public who wishes to address a public hearing on the consent agenda, please complete a speaker request form and place it in the bin next to the speaker's podium, and it will be heard during the regular agenda. I have not received any request to speak regarding a public hearing agenda item. Is there any member of the public here who would like to speak to a public hearing on the consent agenda? Seeing none, council, are there items to be removed from consent?
Yes.
Councilmember Dunn?
I'd like to remove 7C, 14C, 20C through 29C, and then 30C for clarification.
Okay. So is there a motion on the consent agenda with the exception of items 7, 14, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30? A motion.
I'll make a motion.
I have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. So we will now move on to the consent agenda items and begin with item 7. And I'll turn it over to City Manager Jeff Tyne.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council. So item 7C, Boards and Commissions appointment. And you may recall on June 8th, 2021, the Council Board and Commission Subcommittee made the following appointment and reappointment recommendations. This would be a request for City Council to approve these members. That includes reappointing Katrina Romjan as a regular member of the Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities Board with a term to expire December 31st, 2023. To appoint Aminda Parafinic as a regular member of the Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities Board with a term to expire June 30th, 2023. To appoint Donald Singer as a regular member of the Parks, Recreation, and Community Facilities Board for a term to expire December 31st, 2022. And then to appoint Kevin Conde as an alternate member of the Veterans Memorial Board for a term to expire December 31st, 2023. And to appoint Robert Alford as an alternate member of the Veterans Memorial Board for a term to expire June 30th, 2023. And with that, I'll address any questions you might have.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yes.
Councilmember Dunn?
So thank you for those that are serving and those that have just been appointed. I just wanted some clarification because I do know that we have 150 plus positions, and for just clarity and for the public, those at home, I wanted to find out what is the process. I know we just appointed, I believe, 3 positions for Park and Rec, 1 from Ironwood, 2 from Mesquite. So congratulations to those people. But out of all these positions, I first of all wanted to find out, I do know the mayor picks some of the council members to oversee this. Can I get an explanation or a clarification on how this process is put into place so those at home that are sitting here watching, I'll be spurred on to serve and more than, because I think right now we have 5 from the Pine District represented and 12 from the Acacia District. So what is the process, and if you could just help clarify some of this so we can get more people involved than, you know, just a few.
Mr. Tyne, before you answer that, I do want to clarify something. The mayor picks people to oversee this based on them volunteering to serve on boards and commissions, subcommittees, council subcommittees. There's a number of council subcommittees. Every year I go through them with all of our members of our city council. I did it with you. I do it with everyone else. And some people have chosen to serve on this one. And so I just wanted to clarify that. Everyone is given a chance to serve. And now with regards to your question, is that, I'd like to ask our city attorney, because we can't sway from the agenda. This is an agenda to appoint people. It is not an agenda to talk about the process, which we can certainly do at a later date. But if you'd like to address that, I want to make sure we're okay.
Yes, Mayor. The agenda item is discussion and possible action to approve these specific members. So I would recommend adhering to that specific, purpose of the agenda item.
So if you would like to talk about the process, I'd be happy to meet with you and tell you how that process works. Obviously, you're able to go and attend the boards and commissions subcommittee meetings at any time they're open for the public.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate that, but this was also for the public to also see. So thank you for clarifying that, and hopefully at another date we will find out why there's only 5 on the Pine District and 12 in the Acacia. So we can go on to 14C. And I'd just like a clarification on this contract as far as, the process. Did it go out to bid? Was it IGA? Were there other companies interested and who perform this type of work?
Mr. Tyne?
Yeah, Mayor and Council, I probably should provide an overview of what this is on. That is a specific item as related to the discussion and the action here is to authorize and approve a telecommunication license agreement with Wired Connect LLC for a period of 5 years. On June 24th of 2021, that firm had represented and provided documents to the city that established that the Arizona Corporation Commission determined that they would receive a certificate of necessity and convenience, authorizing it to construct, operate, and maintain facilities to furnish telecommunications service to the public. This makes it, it allows it to have a license to use the city's rights-of-way as necessary. So Wired desires to install, operate, maintain, and repair cable, which contains bundles of multiple fibers that are to be routed through underground conduits within the city's right-of-way. Just to be clear, on a license agreement like this, this is just going to specifically allow for this firm to work within the terms and conditions that are established, to establish a performance bond if they were to do business here in the city, and also work and coordinate with the state's 811 system. This does not relate to a specific item. If they did intend to work within the city of Peoria, they would work with our staff, work through all of the specific regulations, codes, and requirements that are specifically that. So there is no specific IGA with the only action being to authorize the license agreement at this point in time. We also do have with us Adina Lund, our development engineering director, who designs well, who is here to address any questions as well.
So just to clarify, this is on here because the Corporation Commission has enabled this company, this telecommunications firm, to work in various places, and they have not, they are not doing a specific job in the city of Peoria at this time, which is why we are calling this routine.
Yes.
Putting on consent.
That's the concept.
Thank you. Is there any questions?
Yes, there is. So typically, I do understand what you're saying. I wanted to know, are there other companies that do this type of work? And the reason why is because my concern is, if we do have several companies that perform this and they're approved by the Corporation Commission, can we have 2 and 3 times, 2 and 3 companies digging up the streets separate times? It kind of causes a little bit of a concern there. And so I'm just asking for some clarification.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I will say that we do have other license agreements with other companies that have gotten their telecommunications approved through. So any company that comes in, and we have the same contract language that is available for all the different companies. We do try to encourage them to come in at the same time. Unfortunately for those companies, they're servicing different areas at different times. So while we ask them to work together, we cannot require them to come in at the same time. So there are places where we have different conduits for different companies. I mean, for example, we would have a CenturyLink or a Cox and different providers for different people to choose who their telecommunications provider would be. So we do run into that issue, and it is difficult, but they have to come in and they have to do their design plans, and we issue permits, and we try to put them in the best places possible to impact the pavement as little as possible.
And I don't think this question would be, this is the last question, because again, if I pull these, it's just for clarification. But if there are other companies that are doing this, would this make it so it's harder for them, or just can anybody come in and be approved with the Corporation Commission, and be able to do this work, you know, under these qualifications? That, again, that was my concern, is I know we can't determine if there's 2 and 3, you know, times that the pavement's torn up, but we can, I want to make sure that this doesn't hurt any other companies from being able to do this or give another company an unfair advantage.
Yeah, we do not determine the companies that go through the Corporation Commission to get identified as a telecommunications provider, and we do not have any say in the areas that they serve. That is worked out between them and the Corporation Commission. So we're just kind of a party to the outcome of that, but nobody else is limited in going through that process with them. And once they do, they're free to come in and work with us on the license agreement.
Thank you, Adina.
Thank you. So I'm going to backtrack and vote on first item 7C and then item 14C. Do I have a motion on item 7C, please?
Move to approve. Second.
Motion and a second, please vote. And 7C passes unanimously. And item 14C, which is the telecommunications license agreement, do I have a motion on that?
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously. All right, the next item is 20. Item 20C. Mr. Tyne?
Thank you, Mayor. So item 20 is one of several resolutions you see for an intention to form Maintenance Improvement District for the new subdivision plan at Camino Al Lago, located at Deer Valley Road and Lake Pleasant Parkway, this one being specifically the South Parcel 4. This item is a formation for that area. The final plats of the parcels were approved by council on March 2nd. In March 2nd, 2020. In new residential developments, Homeowners Association is responsible for maintaining the landscaped tracks and the retention basins within their development. However, in the rare event that a homeowner association were to go defunct or to fail, this MID provides a mechanism for the city to be able to take over the operations, maintenance, repair, and improvements of those areas and to recover its cost through an assessment on individual homeowners' property tax bills. So as such, there's no fiscal impact in the creation of this, what we call a MID, Maintenance Improvement District, with this item this evening. With that, it will address any question on this item.
So if I have this correct, Maintenance Improvement District actually protects the rest of the taxpayers in the city from any harm that this HOA might do if it falls out of good standing.
Mayor, that is the concept, yes.
Okay, thank you. And that is why it is considered routine. All right, Councilmember Dunn, did you have a question with regards to this MID or these many MIDs?
Yes, I do. Thank you. The clarification I'm looking for is at the end of each one of these particular 20Cs, since that's the one we're on, it states a state of emergency. So I wanted to find out, why is it an emergency for this? And what's the difference between normal business, getting this done, and a state of emergency? What does that create, and what is the time frame between the two?
And if I may, I'm happy to answer the council member's question, excuse me. I think maybe we can have our city attorney, Vanessa, speak a bit about the emergency clause.
Yes, thank you. So I can certainly speak to the timeframe of the emergency clause. So the emergency clause is put in place so that the ordinance would be effective immediately upon adoption by council. A standard ordinance that does not include the emergency clause would be effective 30 days from the adoption and then the mayor's signature. So 30 days from the mayor's signature on the ordinance.
And the concept on these types of districts, and you also see it with street light improvement districts too, is we are working with an individual developer who's looking to develop these parcels. If we can streamline that process so that it is all under the one specific owner, really makes this a much more effective mechanism to work with. So that's the concept of why applying an emergency clause in this instance.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Jeff. I know we spoke earlier on this, and you did give some clarification, but I also wanted this to be clear for those at home that are looking at consent agendas and these items. So thank you for that explanation.
Okay. Do I have a motion on item 20C?
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Now, we're going to get the same explanation on all of these. Would you like to go through the next 9?
I don't think we need to. I was just told that we need to put all 9 on in case I wanted to go back. And so we can vote on all 9, or I'm good with the explanation.
Okay, so do we need to vote on them individually, or can I? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, council, do I have a motion on item 21C?
So moved.
A motion and a second. Please vote. Passes unanimously. Do I have a motion on item 22C?
So moved. Second.
A motion and a second. Please vote. Passes unanimously. Do I have a motion on item 23C?
So moved.
Second? A motion and a second. Council, please vote. Passes unanimously. Are we on 24? May I have a motion on item 24C?
Second?
Motion and a second. Council, please vote. Passes unanimously. Item 25C. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second?
We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. Passes unanimously. Item 26C. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion and a second. Council, please vote. Passes unanimously. Item 27C. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second?
Motion and a second. Council, please vote. Passes unanimously. Item 28C. Do I have
So
a motion?
moved.
Motion and a second. Council, please vote. Passes unanimously. Item 29C. Motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. All right, we are to item 30C. Mr. Tyne?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We also have Adina Lunn, our Development Engineering Director, should there be other subsequent questions. You may recall at the June 15th, 2021 council meeting, council approved a resolution declaring this subject parcel as surplus land. So the action item here tonight is to authorize the execution of documents to complete the land transfer for the disposal of Par Estates Tract A to the successful bidder of the solicitation. Just some quick history on this. In 2009, the owner of the land at this site had dedicated Tract A, as identified, to the city, allowing for a pedestrian non-vehicular connection to C.B. Hayes Park, right there on Mountain View Road. That development did not move forward, so the current ownership, working with the city, came in to revisit the park access and determine with the city that this connection was no longer desired. The city then began the process to dispose of the surplus land, and this action would complete the disposal process. And you can see we do have a series of attachments, including special warranty deed and purchase agreement if there are any questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Dunn, do you have some questions?
Yes, it's just, again, to clarify for those at home and those that look at the consent agenda. This property was given our gift by Par Estates to the city. And then my understanding from speaking with our city manager, it's being taken over by AB Homes. And so there was a purchase fair market value that the staff determined of $12,985. It's for, I believe, 5,300 square feet. Is that correct? Okay. And so I guess my question is, you know, when I first came in, I wanted to find out, you know, was it just, you know, disposed of or given for you know, what price was it and how that's determined. So fair market value, I just wanted to make sure that that fair market value of that $12,985, can you just clarify one more time how that was arrived?
I will pass that over to Ms. Lund. We do follow a very specific process for when we go through these dispositions, including a process for reviewing comps in those areas, but I'll let Ms. Lund speak to any other items to elaborate.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. We do follow City Council Policy 3-2 for any surplus land, and in that policy it talks about the city engineer or designee may, based on the potential value of the land, establish an estimated value based on adjacent property or hire a third party to establish a value. In this case, our staff did look at comparable properties. The difficulty is, since it's a remnant piece and it doesn't fit the current zoning, it's hard to find similar properties that are remnant pieces that are not the size for a house to be developed. So we did look at what A&B Homes paid for the entire parcel, and we looked at the per square foot cost, and that is how we calculated it. So what we did with our evaluation, we then go through our materials management division, and there's a whole nother process that they have to follow, a solicitation that is posted, and the public has a chance to bid on that parcel. And so that's the process that we went through.
So, okay then, so there was no like third-party appraiser, but it was staff looking at comps.
That is correct. The cost for an appraisal, we thought, would be quite expensive, and being able to not have to maintain this parcel of land is of quite a bit of value to the city, because that's would be us weeding it and maintaining it in the long term.
Thank you for that. I know I spoke with you earlier on that and our city manager, and you guys gave us, or gave me some good information, but I did want the public to know what we're doing. So thank you.
And additionally, we had this as a public meeting on June 15th. So this is the second time that the public is hearing this. So do I have a motion on item 30C? Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. All right, we're done with the consent agenda. And we will move on to the regular agenda and new business. And we will begin with item 38R, Code Amendment Chapter 13, Miscellaneous Provisions and Offenses. Mr. Tyne.
Thank you, Mayor. Jay Davies, our interim Public Works Director, will discuss a proposed amendment to the Peoria City Code to address Peoria's transit system. So I'll pass it over to Mr. Davies and Chief Steele.
Thank you, Jeff. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The item before you is discussion and possible action to adopt Ordinance 2021-20, amending Chapter 13 of Peoria City Code, adding Section 110 pertaining to transit prohibited conduct. This is the clicker. There we go. All right, in terms of background, since fiscal year 18, Peoria has invested over $15 million in local transit service, which includes paratransit, fixed route, POGO, and bus stop shelters and infrastructure. And that's just what you all have paid for directly. In addition, our share of Prop 400 and additional federal funds have dramatically leveraged our own investment. Through our transit system, we move an average of 218,000 patrons each year. And in addition to that, we have some new services planned to enhance mobility, both through POGO and RoboRide Medical. So why a transit code of conduct? With this sizable and ongoing investment, Peoria is working to grow our transit system to enhance mobility in our city and provide more connectivity for our residents. As our system grows, it is important that we have tools to help ensure excellent customer service and a positive transit experience. To that end, representatives from Public Works, Police, Neighborhood and Human Services, and the City Attorney's Office developed the proposed language, which does a few things. It addresses behaviors that create unsafe situations for transit users and operators, or those that tend to intimidate and discourage system use. It covers the entire transit system within Peoria, including passenger facilities, vehicles, stops, shelters, etc. It identifies prohibited conduct associated with public transit and focuses on safe and efficient public transit service to make riders feel secure and comfortable while waiting for and traveling by public transit. It can be used to prevent disruptive conduct, which impacts transit and could reduce ridership, waste public funds, and diminish the reputation of this valuable public service. Other partners in the regional transit system have similar provisions, and this helps bring consistency across the system to eliminate jurisdictional enforcement challenges. The proposed language has also been reviewed by two of the largest transit providers in the Valley, Valley Metro and the City of Phoenix, both of whom Peoria contracts with to provide various transit services. And lastly, transit operators can use this tool to educate and deter these behaviors, and then as a last resort, can engage law enforcement as necessary. So what is covered? I'm not going to read all of those for you. As you look at those, you can see that they basically encompass the type of behaviors that would obviously be disruptive in most public settings and certainly in a transit environment. Again, these standards apply to all patrons, and of course we will lead with education. If approved, here are some next steps. We would develop an educational campaign to educate the public and particularly transit riders on the ordinance itself and the violations and, of course, the penalties. We would finalize the administrative protocols and training for law enforcement, but more importantly for our own transit personnel and staff to use this as a tool. And lastly, if approved, we would look to implement this by October 1st of this year. At this time, the panel here is available for any questions that you have.
Thank you. Councilor, are there any questions for Mr. Davies? I just have one question. You said that this conforms to what is required regionally, so Valley Metro buses have similar codes already in effect?
Mayor, that's correct. This is extremely consistent with what our other transit partners around the valley are doing within the same system.
All right, thank you. All right, seeing no further discussion, is there a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item 39R is Memorandum of Understanding, Salt River Project and Participating Entities, Bartlett Dam Modification Feasibility Study. That is a mouthful. Mr. Ty.
Thank you. We'll try to simplify that. And this is all part of Peoria's continued effort on its drought contingency planning in efforts to secure our future water supplies as well. And so with us, we have Kate Powers, our Water Services Director, who will discuss for your consideration agreement with the Salt River Project. Thank you, Mr. Powers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Tyne. Good evening, Mayor and Council. At a council presentation this past April, Water Services indicated that we would be ramping up our efforts to secure additional water resources over time. And item 39R is one of the ways that we're doing this. The purpose of this item is to seek approval to enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Salt River Project and other various entities to study the feasibility of modifying Bartlett Dam on the Verde River. So over the past year, the Salt River Project, in partnership with the Bureau of Reclamation and other entities, have performed what's called an appraisal study. It's an initial study of a project to look at addressing concerns on the Verde River water supply system. The primary concerns for the system are increasing variability of precipitation events, rain and snow, and the increasing amount of sediment or dirt that's piling up behind the various dams. The results of the initial appraisal study was recommendations to continue the project forward to the next step, obtain needed congressional funding at the federal level, and it also pointed out to a solution to the problem, that which would be raising Bartlett Dam to increase the amount of water that could be stored behind it, and coincidentally making more water available potentially for users in the valley. The next step in the process is a feasibility study. The study will look at several options for how high Bartlett Dam should be raised, start to evaluate environmental impacts, and analyze other design and potential construction considerations. The study will cost approximately $10 million, about half of which would be hoped to be paid for by the federal government, and the rest by interested parties such as SRP and a whole host of other users, including Peoria. There's probably, I don't have an exact list, somewhere between 40 and 70 interested parties. So it's all of our 10 AMWA cities, mining companies, you name it. At this point, Peoria is being asked to sign a Memorandum of Understanding, or an MOU, that formally indicates our interest in participating in the project going forward. This MOU will show our support and our interest in participating, and it will be very useful to those who have to go to the federal level and lobby to get the $5 million for the Bureau and others to use. Let's see, following approval of the MOU, a cost share agreement will be drawn up amongst the various parties, and we'll return to you later on this year or as the project progresses. We don't control the timeline for a lot of this stuff, for your consideration at that point in time. So I want to make it clear there's about $5 million that has to be paid for by non-federal funds. We don't at this point in time know exactly what Peoria's contribution might be, but it would be a fraction of the $5 million. And we would hope to get a very good deal on some water. That's the objective of participating in this. So as you might imagine, staff is recommending approval of the Memorandum of Understanding as stated in the slide here. I'll spare you reading it. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question. Could you talk for just a moment about what happens, what the consequence of that sedimentation is? What happens when there's water that spills over?
Well, hopefully I'll get to be able to answer your question. What's happening right now is as sedimentation builds up behind these dams, it displaces the amount of water that can be stored behind them. And so even though we have a certain allotment right now of Salt River Project water, as that sediment builds up, it slowly but surely threatens that water supply over time. And so it's a very real issue that has to be addressed in some manner. The whole idea of raising the dam is just sort of solving the initial sedimentation problem and a few other issues. And then you get a bonus of potentially more water available to the valley.
Pretty big bonus, pretty big bonus. And considering the alternative where they're letting water just topple over, that will go to waste when it's a precious resource. I think we need to do anything we can to save that water. Councilmember Binsbacher?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. I don't think we can let any water go to waste. Is the reason, a question about the unknown dollar amount, is the reason it's unknown is because it's not clear how many others are participating?
Yeah, I mean, we have an idea of a range of the dollars we're talking about. I hesitate to say it in this forum, to be blunt, because it's a bit of a negotiation, and I think it'll change over time. We also have our eye on the amount of water that we might get from this process. You know, I think that we can talk much more about specifics at the time we talk about the cost agreement and we bring it back to you. Of course, all of that will be available, but it's all a little premature, I think, at this point in time.
Understood.
I don't mean to be evasive, but
No, that's
Mayor and
okay.
Council, that's the best answer I can give you at this time.
I understand. I just appreciate that we're part of a collaboration. It's a lot of
And at
money.
this point, we're only talking about a memorandum of understanding and not the total negotiated deal at this point. So we just want to have a seat at the table to make sure that.
Mayor and Council, that's exactly it. This gets us our seat at the table, and it sort of outlines expectations going forward for the various parties to put the deal together.
And it's free at this point.
Mayor and Council, yes, it is.
Today it's free.
Thank you. Councilmember Dunn.
So my question is, I understand how important this is and how important water is. Is there a big difference in the cost of, and is it even possible for dredging versus extending the height of the wall?
The appraisal study looked at that in quite a bit of detail, and there were special groups put together to study that specific item. I wasn't part of those groups, but we had staff members who sat in on those meetings. And the cost-benefit analysis of doing it just didn't match up to what you get out of raising the dam. The sediment is, there's a lot of it. I mean, it's literally over, I don't want to quote the number, but it's a tremendous amount of money to move it out from behind the various dams up and down the system. And it was actually deemed, I believe it's going to cost less to raise the dam than it was to move all the sediment. And there's these ancillary benefits you get out of raising the dam. We don't yet know how high the dam is going to be raised, so that's a bit of the puzzle going forward. That's what the next study will look into.
Thank you. I know it's very important, so thank you very much.
Right, there being no further discussion, do we have a motion on item, where are we, 39?
So moved.
39R.
A
We have a
motion to
motion
approve.
and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. And now, item 40R, property acquisition, vicinity of 83rd Avenue and Cotton Crossing. Mr. Tyne.
Thank you. And Katie Gregory, our Deputy City Manager, and Scott White, our Real Estate Development Officer, are here in audience to propose the property acquisition within the Peoria Place PAD. So I'll pass it over to Mr. White.
Well, good evening, Mayor and City Council. It's great to be before you tonight. The matter before you tonight is consideration for the acquisition of 3.93 acres of land on Lot 1 of the Peoria Place properties in Old Town. The reason for the purpose of the acquisition is to enable the realignment of 83rd Avenue from its current configuration to improve overall circulation in the area, provide for improved transit opportunities in the future in the area, as well as to create a gateway entrance into Old Town off of Cotton Crossing. So the exhibit that you're looking at right now, we're focused on the triangular parcel, Lot 1, which is bounded on the north by Monroe Street, to the south by Cotton Crossing, and to the west by the existing 83rd Avenue alignment. So what we are proposing to do, which was originally envisioned as part of the Old Town design concept that was finalized in 2019 and memorialized in the Peoria Place PAD amendment in 2020, is to now acquire the land for the purpose of that realignment in the form of right-of-way so that we can make this reality. So let me explain what you're looking at here. So there's a series of engineering exhibits. The top left image is the existing Lot 1 in its current configuration. To the upper right exhibit, upper right corner, you will see outlined in what I'll call tangerine, that's what it kind of looks like to me, the proposed realignment. So as you can see, it bifurcates Lot 1. It provides a direct alignment with Whitney and direct full intersection with Cotton Crossing. So we feel this really provides an enhanced entrance into Old Town, opportunities for gateway treatments, and as I mentioned, overall improvement for circulation and future transit opportunities. With this new alignment, it creates 2 new parcels. The blue parcel, it will remain private, and it is approximately 4.61 acres in size. And what that left was the green parcel, parcel A, at 2.91 acres, that was viewed by the landowner as an uneconomic remnant. And so as we get to the exhibit in the lower left corner, which shows the total consideration for acquisition being the 1.02 acres for the right-of-way for the street realignment, plus the 2.91 acres, which was viewed by the landowner as an uneconomic remnant. For our future use, whether it be for expansion of the existing municipal campus, public spaces, placemaking, or selling it for private development. In terms of actions completed, we had an executive session conversation about negotiation terms back in April of 2020. The Peoria Place PAD was approved in June of 2020. We started the engineering survey and road redesign work in June of 21 with new legal descriptions, updated title report. We're now in the midst of a phase 1 environmental report. So all the due diligence has been done. The phase 1 should be completed before the due diligence period contained in the purchase and sale agreement terminates. So we are on track. The request before you tonight is to acquire the property, the total of 3.93 acres at appraised value plus 10%. So the negotiation was a sale at appraised value plus 10% equaling $8.25 per square foot. So that equals the $1.4 million, which does not include customary closing costs or maintenance over the term. And so with that, that concludes my presentation. I'll try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Councilmember Patena?
Thank you, Mayor Scott. Could you go back a couple slides to the color sections? Right there.
Yes.
So the blue is going to remain privately owned, correct?
Correct.
Is there any idea what the landowner might be using that parcel for?
They're essentially the uses that are allowed under the Peoria Place PAD amendment. So there are a number of uses, multifamily housing, there could be some retail. So it really depends on what the market response is to it. But the short answer is whatever the PAD amendment allows for that piece is what likely will be used, unless they come in for another amendment to the PAD if they have a specific user in mind that doesn't happen to fall within those allowed uses today.
Okay. And then the green is going to be owned by the city of Peoria, correct?
Correct.
I know that we're purchasing it for the realignment, but is there any thought of what we might be using that land for?
Actually, that's to be determined. I think it could be used for a number of things personally. It's very close to the municipal campus, so if we had a need to expand, we could. It could be used for private development, 2.91 acres. If there were a particular user that we really liked, it could go in that direction. It could be used for public spaces and placemaking, enhanced entry monumentation, and quite a few things, as well as what the PAD land use allowances allow for currently.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Hunt?
Scott, I just want to say thank you for all your hard work on this. How many years has it been? I don't even know. This is so exciting because it's the first real concrete or dirt step in developing Peoria Place. So kudos to you, and thanks for hanging in there, and thanks for making this happen.
My pleasure.
Councilmember Dunn?
So when I originally took a look at this, I thought this was in conjunction with the planned area and what we were doing with Vintage Partners, and that's no longer the case as far as I'm aware. how does this fit in? I mean, do we have that use? Do we have somebody that has stated the use? I mean, it seems like we're spending money here and we don't really know what the use is going to be.
Well, first of all, this had nothing to do with Vintage Partners. This is land owned privately by Highland Capital. And so this goes back to the PAD amendment of 2020 and the Old Town Design concept even before that. So this has actually been in the works for some time. This is all getting it ready for sale. And so the property is currently being brokered for sale. And so those landowners will come in and they will propose their uses. Some will likely be in compliance with existing land uses per the zoning. Some may not, and they may come in for a PAD amendment. But yeah, no, this is all real positive. And it's all going forward now from a land transaction perspective. That whole process is in the works.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It is really good news because I know during the economic downturn, that property went into, I don't know if it was bankruptcy, but it was certainly went to a bank and then a different bank and then a different bank, and then being able to get all of this situated so that we can have our infrastructure as well as protect our entrance into Old Town. It's a big deal. It has really been a long time coming. I don't know how many years and years we've been talking about this. So congratulations on it finally coming to the end that we needed it to come to for the benefit of the residents of Peoria. So with that, is there a motion? A motion?
I move that we accept this.
We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes with the exception of Councilmember Dunn, who has voted no. All right. We will now move on to item 41R, redistricting update. Mr. Tyne.
Thank you, Ms. White. And yes, with Census 2020 results that are in, and as we had discussed just recently in our study session, Peoria's growth has clearly been identified as phenomenal. But as a result of that, we do work with our federal government, which requires redistricting to balance our representation here for our voters. So with that, we have Andrew Granger, our Deputy City Manager, and Jennifer Stein, Director of Communications and Economic Development, here to discuss that process. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Granger.
Thank you, Mr. Stein. Mayor and Council, I just wanted to, before we turn it over to Ms. Stein for the formal presentation on the redistricting process, I just wanted to highlight something that the mayor said earlier today in the study session, and that's that we got our census data back late last week, and it showed that Census Bureau counted our population at 191,000 for the year of 2020. That's a significant growth rate, especially in proportion to what other incorporated state, cities, and towns grew at. And what the significance of that is towards our state shared revenue. Our state shared revenue is going to grow proportionately to what other cities and towns on average are going to get. So it's going to significantly impact our budget in a good way. And we'll know what those numbers are here in the next few weeks, and we'll be able to report that back to you in the future. Secondly, we grew by almost 30,000 citizens over the last 5 years. That's more growth than we've ever had in the city of Peoria. And what that means is each of the districts is going to grow by approximately 5,000 citizens. So when Ms. Stein presents this redistricting process, it's going to be pretty significant because right now each district has about 27,000 citizens within the district, and it's going to grow to almost 32,000 citizens per district. So pretty significant. So we're looking forward to it, and we've got a shortened process as Ms. Stein's going to go into, which is going to be about 4 months, which is compressed, but we know that we can do it. So that with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Granger. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Tonight, I'm going to provide a brief overview of redistricting and then discuss the adoption of the criteria, which will then set the guidelines for the map building process that we will take to the public soon, where residents are going to be encouraged to help out with redrawing the district boundaries. But first, I want to introduce a key partner RSA, who's here in the audience, our consultant, Eddie Sijens, and Marcy Rosenberg. They have been, again, a key partner in helping us as they will collect all the data, crunch it, and analyze it, and run the mapping technology, which would then result in all the finalist map, which we'll arrive to in December. But I also want to acknowledge that initially when we did start this process, we were under the leadership of Tony Sijens. And he passed away a few months after the RFP was finalized, but he led us in during the last mid-decade redistricting, and his wife, Eddie, immediately jumped in as she has been working alongside Tony for many years. So I just want to thank, again, Eddie and the team for just not even taking a pause and wanting to continue this important project. So we're definitely excited to carry out the legacy of Tony and make him proud. So with that said, we're really excited to delve into this, and we'll go ahead and get started with just some basic history. As you know, Peoria became a city in 1983. And also, actually, I also want to, there's more people to recognize. This is a tremendous effort. So I want to acknowledge our internal committee as well. Andy Granger, Rhonda Jerminski, Vanessa Hickman, Emily Jeremy, Chris Hawkes, Chris Domelin. From the communications team, this involves a lot of public outreach, information and education as well. So Christina Perez, Tim Iden, Marianne Loya, Trevor Freeman, and Mike Iverson. And then this redistricting process, we have the community engagement team joining, Daniel Morello and Adam Johnson. I want to mention that because we did assemble a large team to ensure the success of this process. So this is important. Everyone's working really hard, as Andy alluded, in a very short, condensed time frame. So in 1989, 6 council districts were established. And as you know, the city is required to adjust district boundaries to provide equal population in each district. So after each census, it triggers the redistricting process. Now, what happened here in this scenario is that typically we would receive our census data, would be delivered end of April. And that, unfortunately, has been delayed 6 months, given the pandemic situation. We are not expected to receive the data until end of September, although we are receiving pieces of the legacy data, which we're going to refer to in a moment. But in our city, per our charter census, redistricting needs to be finalized prior to the primary election, 6 months in advance, and then also needs to be due to the council when they start to set the precincts. So it's really, I think Mesa is the other city. There's just a few of us cities that are in this scenario of kind of a fast, streamlined, expedited redistricting process. But the good news is we're doing everything we always have done in the past to ensure that the public will be involved, they'll have opportunities to engage, provide feedback, and of course build new maps. This is the exciting side. This one, I think we're all happy, and I heard in study session we referenced that we are at 191,000, and that's a tremendous growth, 27%. So we definitely are proud of this number, and again, this will be part of that map-making process. We'll be crunching all these numbers. Here's a map of what looks like what occurred in 2015 during the redistricting process. And about 26,000 per district is what was equalized, and given the numbers today, it looks like it's going to probably reach about 32,000. But for example, according to MAG, there are 40,000 in Mesquite. So it's going to be interesting to see, again, trying to equalize all the numbers. So there will be some shifting as you'll see occur. So the criteria, this is important. There are federal requirements, so the first 3 that I'm addressing need to occur during the process. Having substantial equal population, protecting the minority voting rights pursuant to the Voting Rights Act, and be contiguous. So we're following the additional criteria from the last time. And early in the summer, I provided information about what that looked like and kind of went through the different items. So these items include being compact and following visible or man-made boundaries such as mountains, rivers, and roads. Not contain more than one master plan age-restricted community to best represent all residents. Preserve communities of interest and should not unnecessarily divide neighborhoods that have similar socioeconomic, for example, lifestyle, political interests. Strive for continuity in office, which is an example is to keep to minimize voter disruption and to keep an incumbent in the existing boundary that they reside in. So the timeline, as I mentioned, this is an intense, short timeline, but we are, as of tonight, and actually already it's been underway with some public information in our newsletter and in our media briefs, and our webpage has been established. So there's already been some initial redistricting information, but after tonight, we will really ramp that up. So you'll see the first round of public outreach will occur the week of October 11th. And this is when we will go out and start to not only educate, but inform residents on how to use the mapping technology, which is really easy to use, and we'll get to that in a moment. Then we have come back here, so we'll be seeing a lot of each other. Come back, and then get feedback and just narrow down the maps. And actually, in real time, Eddie will be providing feedback to the map participants as well, so they can see how their map performed. That's why the criteria is really important, because that helps, again, set the guidance. Then we will take the finalist maps back out to the public for round 2, where we will encourage residents to provide feedback, and they'll have a questionnaire, and we will do this not only in person, but we're going to add this time around virtual meetings. So there will be plenty of opportunities to gather feedback. Then we'll come back again, and then with council, you'll select the final, and we'll adopt the final map by December 14th. So I just wanted to kind of go through. It's a tight timeline, but we're ready and we're prepared to hit the road running. Hit the ground running. Okay, so if you like the game Tetris, or if you enjoyed playing Legos as a child, this will be very easy for you, because you're essentially taking census tracts and then with the criteria building different maps. So, and if you didn't like those games, I could do it. So if I could do it, I think anyone could do this. It's very easy to navigate and simple for people to participate. So what we're going to do in that first round is make sure we get out to the community through the open houses. We'll utilize our traditional and social media platforms. Also hit various community meetings through our HOAs, boards and commissions. We're just going to, again, wherever we can be to provide redistricting information, we're going to make it fun. Well, first of all, we're going to get people excited about it and show them how easy this is. And then our online mapping software, we'll have different videos and tutorials, and the consultant will be there with us to help illustrate and demonstrate how the system works. So we're going to do that for round 1. Just here's an example. We will be geographically throughout the entire city, making sure everyone has options, various times. We'll be at Copper Hills Church, Rio Vista, the Community Center, Pop-Up Peoria, and then virtual meetings will be offered in conjunction. And then we come back round 2 for the feedback. So similar setup to keep it consistent for residents to be able to identify the next location and round up. So now we're looking at possible discussion, possible action to adopt the resolution approving the redistricting criteria. But are there any questions?
Thank you for that presentation. Councilor, are there any questions? Ready to go. A lot of us have been through this before. I just have one question about the mapping software. So when a citizen creates a new map, are they going to get feedback immediately as to whether their map meets all the criteria that's legally necessary?
Yes, they are going to get feedback. I don't know if it's within a few days. Right, because then one business day, yes, for the net. So it will be quick. I was going to say real time, but that's close enough.
Yeah.
That you will be able to receive feedback and see how your map performed.
So if their map didn't meet all the legal criteria, they can just start over again.
You could build as many maps as you would like, Mayor. It's endless. I encourage that. We would love to see a number of maps come in.
Good.
I don't know how many yet, I haven't made a goal, but a lot. We had a good turn, we had a good map response last time.
All right. Council, any other questions? No? All right, then let us, I would like a motion on Resolution 2021-85. And a second. We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously. Thank you. We appreciate your work and we appreciate your time and help. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Right, we will now move on to item 42R, rezoning, converge at P83, 75th Avenue and Paradise Lane. Mr. Tyne?
Brady, we have with us Chris Hawkes, our planning director, to present on this rezoning request for what is termed the Converge at P83 development project. I'll pass it to Mr. Hawkes.
Great. Well, good evening, council. It's good to see everybody back again. This item is item 42R. This is a proposed rezone of property located at the southwest corner of 75 and Paradise Lane. This applicant this evening is Ben Tate with the law firm of Withy Morris. They are representing the Sub 4 Development Company. The applicants are asking to rezone the subject property to a planned area development, or what we call a PAD. So for the viewing audience, what is a PAD? A PAD is a unique type of zoning district where the standards can be tailored to fit a certain context, or what we try to do is maximize compatibility. So that's really the purpose of a PAD. In this case, if approved, the rezone would facilitate the development of a 5-story vertical mixed-use building with up to 195 residential units, 2,000 square feet of ground floor commercial space, and a structured parking garage. Let's talk a little bit about the site and area context. The site is identified in red on the screen there. It consists of an irregularly shaped property of approximately 3.13 net acres. The site is hemmed in by the Skunk Creek to the west and the Arizona Canal Diversion Channel. We'll call it the AC/DC channel throughout the presentation. These channels have been expanded and engineered over the decades to carry larger volumes of stormwater. Those properties are now owned and managed by the Maricopa County Flood Control District. So with the adjacent roadways and the canals on the west and south side, we have a site without a common property line, rather. So in terms of the adjacent uses there, to the south, again, the AC/DC canal provides approximately 500 plus feet of separation between the site and the nearest single-family development, which is called Legacy Place, and also the mini storage development, which fronts 75th Avenue, but also directly across from the development. To the west is Skunk Creek. Skunk Creek provides about 165 feet of separation from the site and the Stadium View townhomes. To the north is the small commercial complex with the Osso restaurant. And to the east, this is a recently constructed multifamily complex called Paradise at P83. So contextually looking back, the site is located at a signalized intersection at Paradise and 75th Avenue. It's approximately a quarter mile from Bell Road and about 3/4 of a mile from 83rd Avenue. Arguably, I would say, despite the current entitlement, the site has struggled over the years to gain traction for commercial uses. In a minute, I'll talk about the zoning history for the site. In addition to its size and shape, it does not enjoy the visibility, the access, or the critical mass of perhaps a Bell Road or further west on 83rd Avenue. However, it is with what is termed as the east end of the P83 district. We'll talk more about what that means. This is an area that is intended to provide additional support and activation to other uses in the district and really provide that cross-district pedestrian traffic that we're seeking here. All right, so first a little bit about the zoning background. The site has been subject to a number of zoning actions over the last 40 years. So back in 1982, prior to the channelization of Skunk Creek, it was zoned to multifamily and light industrial. In 2007, it was changed to Paradiso PAD, and at that time it was contemplated to be a 4-story mixed-use building with a maximum height of 60 feet, an additional 10 feet for mechanical equipment, which included access to Paradise and 75th Avenue. That did not come to fruition, and later on in 2018, the City Council approved the Marriott PAD, which is the current entitlement for the property. So this approved a 4-story dual-format hotel, and it was a Fairfield Inn and a Town Place Suites. There were 198 rooms with some ancillary commercial operations there. Maximum height was allowed to be 65 feet, and that also included access to Paradise Lane and 75th Avenue. All right, before I discuss the project concepts, I think it's instructive that we talk about the vision that underpins the site and the P83 district overall. So as the council is aware, this is a vision that's been in place for well over a decade, and the city has been actively working to advance the transformation of this area. So with the channelization of Skunk Creek in the 1990s, this area did see rapid development with the sports complex in the 90s, large format retail that developed on Bell Road, and we saw Harkins and restaurant pads along 83rd Avenue. So while this area was very successful, there was a recognition among the council and the city that it lacked a cohesive identity. It was oftentimes confused with Arrowhead or other points around the area. Restaurant Row did not have a cohesive identity. It was also not a walkable area. You essentially had to drive to each different pad and really shut down outside of spring training time. People would go to a game and then go home, or go to a restaurant and go home. So it did not have that activation that we're seeking for this district. So that recognition was the impetus really for the development and adoption of the 2010 Sports Complex Urban Design Plan. And that plan cemented the city's vision for building on the assets in the area and really transforming the district into an energetic, multi-use, pedestrian-oriented experience, a place that offers a different lifestyle experience that perhaps isn't very evident in the valley, and certainly not many places in the West Valley. It was also the seed for the rebranding of the area as P83, or Peoria 83rd Avenue, 83rd being the signature or main roadway in the district. The city, as you know, also invested in some of the theming projects over the years. We see the bridge, we see a lot of the sign and theming treatments throughout the district. The plan also offered guidance on the character, the land uses, and the urban form. The urban form means, how do buildings approach the street? What kind of a streetscape experience do we have here? Now, the parcel was identified in the plan as part of the so-called East End. So it's shown in purple on the screen, or denoted with a 9. There was a recognition that with the primary visibility and energy along 83rd Avenue, it was important to have a secondary area, or an eastern barbell as we call it internally, to have an area that could help drive cross-district travel, help activate the overall district. The plan contemplated the buildings potentially up to 10 stories in height and maximum setbacks. What does maximum setbacks mean? That means that the design concept was to pull buildings closer to the street. So rather than having a form that had large parking fields, buildings far set back, more of a suburban model, we're looking for more of an urban model where we had buildings pulled to the street, and more of that streetscape experience that we're looking for. It was also identified preferred uses in the area, and you can see on the screen that included multifamily, live-work opportunities, office, and other mixed-use types. Now, successful mixed-use areas, they require a mix of uses to drive that daytime and nighttime activation that we're looking for. You need people, you need services, jobs, and you need things to do. And that's the critical mass that is sought in the district. This graphic illustrates the general plan land use designation. As you know, the general plan is the city's blueprint for growth and development decisions in the city. It was most recently ratified last November and addresses a multitude of topical areas, everything from circulation to land use to housing and so forth. In the general plan, P83 is recognized as one of a few activity centers in the city. What does that mean? These are areas where we contemplate a mix of uses, and it's an area of rising intensity. The entire P83 area, and we look at the P83 area as points east of the 101, north of Skunk Creek, Bell Road to the north, and generally the Glendale boundary on the eastern side. So on the general plan, it's designated as mixed-use commercial, community district rather. It aligns with the urban design plan that we adopted and advances those desired attributes. So again, calls for high-intensity centers, that urban environment, that pedestrian-focused experience is important. Envisions tall buildings pulled to the street, parking behind the buildings, so really getting for that urban experience. And also recognizes residential densities that would be in excess of 20 dwelling units per acre. Oftentimes in a suburban setting, we see multifamily densities anywhere from 12 units per acre up to 18, 20 units per acre, so it's very low dense in terms of multifamily residential. Okay, I'm going to start, the next several slides are going to talk about the conceptual development plan. So what you're looking at on the top screen is a rendering of the building from the 75th Avenue and Paradise vantage point. And then below that is a site plan overlaid on an aerial map there. So again, we're looking at a building that is pulled to the street. It's got that urban form, front-facing, framing the intersection. It is a 5-story building. We'll talk more about the different attributes of it. But the maximum building height is 71 feet, and that is at the architectural element at that intersection. It includes up to 195 residential units. These units range from studio to 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units, although I'll say that the majority of these units are studio and 1-bedroom units. Only a small proportion are 3-bedroom units. There's also includes a ground floor commercial space of about 2,000 square feet. So that could be anything. It could be a wine bar, it could be a restaurant, it could be a retail space, it could be all kinds of things that we have listed within the PAD. And there's also a structured parking garage. So you can't, I don't think we have a development in the city that has a structured parking garage that's integrated within the development. So this would be the first of that kind, and I'll talk more about that asset here. Also includes an amenity package that includes quite a bit of amenities for the residents of the site, including 2 fifth-story lounges, rather, to provide viewpoints to the mountains to the northeast or to the activities to the west to PAD 3. And also contemplates trail connections, and I'll also talk about the trail projects that are contemplated and funded for along the northern part of the AC/DC canal there. This graphic illustrates the ground floor building footprint. The primary access to the site will be at Paradise Lane. That provides the front door with a secondary access at 75th at the southeast part of the site. The parking structure is identified in gray on the screen. It would be accessed with ingress and egress at the southern side of the building. The area shaded in blue, that is the commercial opportunity that I spoke of at the ground floor at the corner there. Additionally, when you think about the other spaces along Paradise Lane, it includes a lobby, a leasing office, and a fitness center. It's all located street side on the ground floor next to the commercial space. The reason why that's important is it provides, from Paradise, it provides that activation of the streetscape. So rather than units, it has active uses that are occurring along that streetscape. Also along the streetscape, we also have bike racks, seating areas, and shade trees. Again, trying to promote that pedestrian experience there. Next few images I'm going to show you are some of the elevations. The top one, you're looking at what you would be seeing from the Paradise Lane elevation, as well as the 75th Avenue side. It's, as you can see, a very attractive building with variations in color and texture, as well as movement in the building plane. The architectural element at the corner of 75th and Paradise is the highest point at 71 feet, rather. The height of the parapet, or the effective height, the height at the upper level of the units, is at 60 feet. So we'll talk about how that relates to past entitlements and buildings in area in a second here. These are elevations along the south side, or facing the AC/DC. You can see the wrapped parking garage denoted on the screen there. You can see an amenity area, which I'll show you in a minute, that's in between the parking garage and the rest of the units. And then if you look at the bottom screen, that is the north and west side, really the side facing Skunk Creek, and with a large part on Paradise Lane. The graphic on the right illustrates the parking garage and the vertical metal fins that are contemplated to wrap the parking garage so that it's seamlessly integrated into the building design. This is what we call a building massing exhibit. This provides a bird's eye view and how the building will be situated on the site. So you can see, again, in the middle of the building, you can see where that parking garage is integrated within the building. You can also see the pool and amenity area along the upper portion of that building. You can kind of see the movement of the building plane to accommodate that amenity area. This graphic illustrates more of the ground floor amenity areas. So these are all the areas shaded in blue. The area in brown is the commercial experience. So ground floor amenities include courtyards, plaza, bike rooms, fitness center, clubhouse, as well as a centralized amenity around the pool. So this is a blow-up of the area around the pool. It includes the pool. Oops, what happened there? Is there a way to go back? I'll be messing it up. There we go. It is the pool sun deck. It includes an outdoor kitchen and dining area, as well as a trailhead station along the bottom part of that graphic, because that will be a point where there'll be future access to the trail along the AC/DC canal. When we talk about upper floor amenities, this graphic illustrates the viewing areas and also a dog run within the parking garage. The northeast corner of that building has a lounge, but also a viewing lounge. These are on the 5th floor. And on the southwest corner, there's another viewing lounge. Later in the presentation, I'll mention, as far as the southwest corner, you'll hear about some concerns about the visual access from that viewing lounge. I'll just note that the applicant is exploring the relocation or the modification of that viewing lounge so that it's adjusted and not doesn't provide the visual access right to the residents. It's intended to face the really the fields and the PUD3 area. That's just a blow up of these areas. That's the deck to the corner there, and the dog run and wash. This graphic illustrates the site access. As I mentioned, the front door is Paradise Lane. It will have full access. This leads to a shuttle and rideshare area. This will be increasingly a much more important component in years ahead. There will be a 10-foot pathway along Paradise Lane that will then wrap around along 75th Avenue to provide that continued pedestrian experience. You can see the 2 arrows along the southern part of the site that will provide future access to a trail along the northern bank of the AC/DC Canal, which also includes a bridge. That project is mostly federal funding and is funded for construction in FY23, so that will happen in the near future there. Secondary access will be along 75th Avenue. So in terms of some of the turning movements, there will be a deceleration lane going southbound, turning into 75th Avenue. There will also be a right turn lane going eastbound on Paradise Lane as you approach the intersection. Other improvements that are contemplated are left turn pockets on Paradise Lane as you enter into the development. Also, the intersection will be restriped as part of the project, which will include dual lefts for northbound access onto 75th Avenue, along with signal timing modifications to make sure that that system functions appropriately. This is a familiar slide, but as we have in all of our rezone actions, there is a public outreach process. We do require a neighborhood meeting to be held. There was a virtual meeting that was held via the Zoom platform on May 17th. We had 3 attendees that logged into this meeting, although I'll indicate that one of those groups had multiple participants that logged in. And the concerns that they expressed at the meeting related to the traffic generation for the development, the concerns with the height of the building, the product type, whether this should be a rental versus an ownership structure, and landscape materials, meaning there was concerns about the trees and landscaping along the southern boundary and whether that would impact the residential areas south of the Skunk Creek. So I'll talk specifically about those comments in a future slide, but to date we've received 2 letters or emails in support of the project, and these came from the nearby business community, and we've received 6 letters and emails in opposition to the project. We've also had communication from Peoria Unified School District. The applicant, of course, like with any project, they're involved with the school district to explain the project and understand where they'll go and how they'll interact with facilities. Both parties, I can report, have agreed to enter into a voluntary developer assistance agreement with this project. So I want to spend the next several slides on what I'll term as the key concerns that we've heard from the residents. You'll probably hear that this evening as well, and I think we can categorize them probably into 4 topical areas. Land use, the stability of the site to withstand a project like this, the building height, and the traffic generation. So in terms of land use, some commented that they would rather have ownership units over rental units. Some commented that they believe there were too many apartments in the area. Some wanted commercial. At the Planning and Zoning Commission, we heard at least a couple had a preference for a gas station or a grocery store. So in terms of land use, as I indicated earlier, this project is definitely in line with the PUD3 vision. It will help drive the critical mass and that will support businesses and provide that opportunity to live, work, and play in the same area. This is arguably, also I mentioned, not a great standalone commercial site. It lacks that visibility and that access that commands the traffic on Bell Road or 83rd Avenue. And I think the 40 years of it being zoned in some fashion commercial and it being vacant kind of plays out that thought there. In a rezone case, we look at fit, form, and function and land use. And in terms of the rental versus ownership structure, we have no legal purview to dictate the rental or ownership structure of that. We're looking at the land use and its impact on the areas there. In terms of ground stability, we heard concerns about the ability of the ground to support the weight of the buildings behind the canal. So with any development, this is really something that has to be evaluated downstream in the process during the construction plan review. Of course, with any development, the applicant's going to have to prepare a soils report and a structural analysis and to demonstrate that the ground and the facility can withstand the loads that are identified in the building. So that's certainly something that will have to be evaluated. All right, I want to talk about the building height. We heard concerns that the buildings might be out of scale, or more importantly, I guess, the impacts on privacy to some of the communities to the south. Again, the residential communities to the south are at least 500 feet from the property line of this development. There are some 5-story buildings already in the district. I think we have 3 5-story buildings already in the P3 district, the hotels near 83rd Avenue. We believe that the building height is very comparable to the entitlements that have been placed on the property with the last 2 in existing entitlement here. As I mentioned earlier, the highest feature is 71 feet. This is an architectural feature that's important to provide building interest. This is at the corner of Paradise and 75th Avenue. But if you look again at the parapet height or the top of those units, it's 60 feet, and this is actually lower than what the current entitlement for the Marriott building would be at 65 feet. The building orientation that has been proposed as part of the project also minimizes visual access. So let me speak to that point on the next slide here. So again, what you're looking at here is a elevation along the AC/DC canal. You can see the garage space with the wrap. You can see the amenity area in the middle, rather. And then on the right, you can see the land use or the aerial photo of the area. So the large portion of the facade is within the wrapped garage area. It's also within the pool amenity area, or it faces the mini storage. In fact, if you look at the total plane of that building, approximately 2/3 of that area consists of the garage or the pool amenity area. The area to the east has balconies that are oriented east and west. In fact, most of the balconies are oriented east and west, facing away from residential. And the portion on the right side is directly north of the mini storage that fronts 75th Avenue. If you look at the portion of the building west of the garage, and looking at the elevation plans, there are approximately 8 units that have balconies above the first floor there. Finally, you'll recall that there are 2 fifth-floor lounges with viewing areas, one at the hard corner at Paradise and the other one at the southwest corner. As I mentioned, the applicant is currently exploring a modification of the footprint of the plan to better align and try to address some of those concerns of neighbors, but try to better align it to points to the west here. So in sum, as we look at this issue, irrespective of the 500-foot separation, we believe the applicant has taken efforts to minimize visual access into points south. And then the next slide relates to concerns about traffic generation, and also a secondary question about whether 75th Avenue could be eliminated altogether or reserved for fire access only. So I'll address these questions at a high level, but also note that our assistant traffic engineer, Brandon Forey, he's also in the audience for any detailed questions. He's a lot smarter than me on these kind of things, but I'll go ahead and address these concerns here. This development did have a traffic study prepared by Southwest Traffic Engineer, and was reviewed by our traffic division. This project generates a relatively low volume of AM and PM peak trips. These are the busiest times of the year, and so that's what we look at those periods. The study found that at build-out, the project will operate at a acceptable level of service. So as the traffic engineer noted at Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the traffic generation is significantly lower than a comparable commercial-only development if it was to occur at this site. And 50% of the traffic generation of the current entitlement, and much less of any standalone commercial development. The study did recommend some lane modifications that I noted earlier. Finally, some respondents asked about the 75th Avenue being eliminated or made emergency only. So our traffic group, after the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, did go back and look at that issue. What they determined is that 75th Avenue is critical for on-site circulation. So in addition to having the proper maneuverability for sanitation and other large vehicles, the project will still generate the trips overall, but it's going to place all the stress at the Paradise and 75th Avenue intersection and getting into the development. So what that means is that'll provide delay times at the intersection and will not provide any commensurate benefit to Point South because it's still generating the amount of trips that would be contemplated if 75th was open rather. So it doesn't improve that concern there. Finally, this project did go to the Planning and Zoning Commission, and as you know, we do issue a notice of application when it comes in, a notice of hearing. The radius that we use is a 600-foot radius for the size of this development, and we also notified all registered HOAs within a 1-mile radius. It was also published in the paper and also posted in accordance with city requirements. So at the public hearing that was held July 15th, last month, we did have 7 speakers that were present that spoke in opposition to the case. And those concerns align with those that were asserted in prior emails. What I'll note tonight is that we did pass out 2 additional letters of opposition that are included in that 7. These are letters that were received after the council packet went out. So we had a very, very good discussion with the commission, and after their deliberation, they did vote 5-0 to recommend approval to the city council. And finally, with my last slide, our findings and recommendation, we believe that this is the right project for the area, that it advances the vision, form, and goals outlined in the Sports Complex Urban Design Plan and the General Plan. It does provide for additional housing and lifestyle options in the area. It conforms with the General Plan land use designation by providing a density above 20 units per acre. We also believe it appropriately catalyzes the desired urban form that the city has long envisioned for PD3, and that we're hopeful we'll see with other projects, potentially Stadium Point near the stadium. And it will help promote that cross-district walkability and activation that we're seeking. So, Mayor and Council, with that, I'm available to answer any questions. I know the applicant is here as well, and our recommendation is to approve Ordinance 2021, subject to conditions in Exhibit 2. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. We have a number of people in the audience who would like to speak. Council, would you care to hold your comments until we hear from our members of the public? All right, good. I have a request to speak form for Ms. Julia Smock. If you would kindly go to the podium and state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes to speak.
Do you mind if I take this off?
Please do.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. My name is Julie Smock. I live at 7932 West Harmony Lane in Peoria. You may know me as a current chair of the Arts Commission, but I'm actually here speaking on behalf of Joan Evans. Joan is a former council member. She would be here, except that she is recovering from a broken hip and is unable to be here, so she asked me to speak on her behalf. So I'm going to read her statement to you. I come today to oppose the planned development on Paradise Lane and 75th Avenue. My biggest concern is with the proposed exit from the property onto 75th Avenue. Allowing entrance and exit from 75th Avenue will create huge traffic problems south of Paradise Lane. There are citizens from the businesses and neighborhoods that use the light at Paradise to offer a break in the flow in order to provide an opportunity to enter from business and feeder streets. The vehicle repair businesses are only allowed a shared exit onto 75th. The athletic building is only allowed one exit onto 75th. All 3 of these businesses will be impacted by an exit from the apartments. All of the neighborhoods that exit onto 75th will be greatly affected as well. Vehicles choosing to enter the apartments from 75th Avenue will back up traffic on the left turn lane. Will entrance to apartments be allowed from 75th? Peoria has historically put safety first. Ironwood District citizens and Palo Verde citizens will be harmed by this exit. Secondly, P83 has established a common look with landscaping. The proposed landscaping does not honor that look. The trees suggested do not fit P83 and are brittle and break in windy weather. We would want the east end of Paradise to mimic the look and the west end. I understand Councilmember Mike Finn is absent from this meeting. We have spoken to many concerned citizens from his district directly affected by this exit. I would suggest postponing this voting until he can be present." And Joan says, "Thank you for your time." I need to add one thing, and that is that I was at the Planning and Zoning meeting, and there were great concerns about 75th Avenue expressed by at least 2 of those members. And I would hope that you really look into that, because it is not like other intersections at all. Thank you.
Thank you, and please pass along our best wishes to Joan Evans.
Well, I will.
Said
And,
Councilmember Evans.
and David is here, and I'm sure he'll pass that along as well.
Thank you. All right, we have a speaker request form, coincidentally, from Mr. David Evans. If you would kindly state your name and address for the record at the podium.
Hello, I'm David Evans, live at 7636 West Laughlin Court. We live directly behind the proposed site. We can see it over our fence. It's, if I stand in our family room right now, I can see the apartments that are there. I can see the second and third story of those apartments through the trees that are behind. Now I'll be able to see all 4 stories going up on the apartments. Okay, mainly I want to talk to you about 75th Avenue. And the critical aspect of that is the increased probability of accidents, and I'm talking about serious accidents. The plans show the buildings will be very close to 75th. Cars going along 75th heading south through the Bell Road light and then Paradise Lane light, if coming along in the right lane and they're speeding up to make the last light, they're coming up to the building that's right up against the street. And we've got cars coming out the back end of that building that probably don't have great visibility. The people that are coming out of the, coming out onto 75th from the parking area, they, somebody might pull up to where they look quickly to the north, and a car coming along in the right lane that's maybe going 50 miles an hour as they go through to make that light, they might not see them. And then that person then looks to the south, if they're going to, whether they're going to make a left or right-hand turn. Maybe they get a little interruption or something, something on their cell phone, so they don't look at that light to the north again. They go out onto 75th and they get hit pretty hard. So that's a very big concern, and I'm very sure that's going to happen. And I'm very sure that there are going to be some serious injuries, if not worse. Okay, I understand that the developers are concerned about circulation on the site, and also they're concerned about a bottleneck being at the light at Paradise Lane. Well, those are the trade-offs. We're talking about, they feel that they can develop 195 apartments on this property the way it's laid out. And so you have a decision. In the past, maybe we are fortunate that those other 2 projects didn't go through because they had talked about having access onto 75th. Maybe we're fortunate that didn't happen. So I would say that you need to think about if there's a serious accident there, there are going to be law firms, even like Mr. Tate's law firm, looking at the city and saying, you should have known that that was a dangerous situation. It's a very short distance from the light at the corner to the back edge of that property. So I can just say that it's a serious concern of ours. We want people to be safe, and we have other concerns, but this is the one I want to focus on, and I think it's the main one you should focus on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. I have another speaker request form from King Rust. I'm sorry if I couldn't read your writing very well. Please.
Yes, I am, and I promise this is not a crank phone call. My name is King Ruby. And
Ruby, thank you very much.
I'm at 7628 West Laughlin Court, right across the canal. Someone is going to come along and develop this property. We in the neighborhood are not necessarily against the development. It's the development that's taken place. Within a mile and a half of this site, there are over 3,000 rental apartments. There are 27 buildings or developments that currently exist. There's another development currently going in at 75th and Acoma, which is going to be condos. And directly across at Acoma and 75th, there's a large housing project going in on the old Peoria school district property back there. It's about 9 acres back in there. So there's a lot of development, other development going on in the area. We're not against the development. We're against the inadequacies of what's being developed on this particular site. It's just over 4 acres, and they're putting over 5 acres of building on that property. The entrances on Paradise Lane and 75th Avenue have less than 100 feet between those main entrances and the bridges. It's not just an accident waiting to happen with the traffic on 75th, but if an accident does happen, where's it gonna go? They're right into the structures of the bridges, both of them, both on Paradise Lane and on 75th. The developer has touted the accessibility and the features of the observation deck to the northeast, the great view of the rear of the commercial buildings that are on that back bell, terrific view, and then also the great view from the western thing of the sports complex, which is over a quarter of a mile away as the crow flies. I doubt very seriously that if you're on that deck with a pair of binoculars, you could read the numbers on somebody playing baseball there. So I think there are other, for the city, better uses of the property. What about you're talking about buying property for city development and city improvement in other areas of the city? You're doing a lot of development in the area around the sports complex. What about a fire substation or a police substation, which will be needed in the area or could be used very effectively in the area? So, as I said, somebody's going to come along and develop this property. It's not the development of that property that we're necessarily against. It's the excess of the development that's being proposed for the property. Yes, the other 2 properties that were proposed there were only 4 stories. This one's 5. It just seems a little excessive. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, and we have a final speaker request form from Kevin Spicer. Sir, if you would kindly, at the podium, state your name and address. For the record, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman and staff. My name is Kevin Spicer. I reside at 7525 West Mary Jane, which is just south of the proposed apartment complex. I'm going to probably come back at this at a little bit different angle, being in commercial real estate and kind of being in the development like these gentlemen are. One of the things that I was recently told by members of your real estate department was that in that specific area, no more apartments were going to be put in. The plan and the idea was to bring more jobs, bring more commerce, bring more infrastructure, and it seems like that we're developing a more urban, high-density residential area to P83 than the actual entertainment district and commerce that it keeps getting touted, to the effect that even the retail space, the developer says the mixed use is less than 3,000 square feet. And less than 3,000 square feet might get you one tenant. And one tenant, in an apartment complex might be a cafe, might be something, but it's not going to develop the jobs or the infrastructure that Peoria, at least the real estate department, keeps touting they want in this area. There's already 757 units on that road. And now we're looking to propose another 195 units. That'll bring almost 1,000 units on that road sharing that light. And so safety is a huge concern, but I think a best use for that, again, would be more retail, maybe a multi-story boutique or something like that with restaurants and things very similar to what's at 83rd Avenue in Happy Valley. But another high-density, urban residential apartment complex that's going to crowd that street and create even more safety concerns. And I may be mistaken, but I believe the traffic study that the developer did provide and that was done during the COVID era and when there was actually less traffic being used on 75th Avenue. So that would be something that we would want to confirm as well, is just how accurate is that traffic during spring training, during Christmas time, you know, during the high use of that area. You know the area. The restaurants are already full. We just don't have enough entertainment right there in that area. And we are in desperate need of more to help spread that out. And I think that, you know, they keep saying best use of this property. And as a commercial broker myself, I really don't think that's best use of this property. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, that is the end of the speaker request forms that I have received. Council, would you care to address this presentation from Mr. Hawkes?
I have a question.
Yes, Councilmember Patena?
So is there anybody here tonight that could explain to me, and maybe this council, why it's better to empty and enter off 83rd Avenue than Paradise Lane?
So is there a traffic engineer in the house?
Mayor, Councilmember Patena, I'm going to ask Brandon Forey, our Assistant Traffic Engineer, to address that question.
All right.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Councilmember Patena, if I could ask for clarification, in your question you had made reference to 83rd Avenue. Did you intend 75th Avenue?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. The purpose that there is a preference to allow a secondary access to this site is the trip generation, where the vehicles are coming from and where they're going to, won't change wherever the access to the site is. So in allowing a second access off 75th Avenue, it actually allows some of the pressure to be taken off Paradise and to be taken off the signalized intersection of 75th Avenue and Paradise. So if we don't have that access on 75th Avenue, all those vehicles and all those additional trips that would enter and exit from 75th Avenue now have to go through the intersection of 75th Avenue and Paradise and access the site from Paradise. And actually one of staff's greater concerns was the short left turn lane that's available on Paradise. And that's a necessity because we have to make sure we're not impacting the storage for the left turn lane on Paradise at 75th Avenue. So we do have a short left turn lane at that location. Additional pressure and traffic on Paradise might actually create more concerns at that location. The study that we looked at showed that there was an acceptable level of service at 75th Avenue, so there was no reason from the traffic standpoint to restrict that access.
So in your opinion, as a traffic man, is it safer to enter and exit that project from 83rd or from
75th.
Paradise Lane?
You said 83rd.
75th. I'll get it right.
Sure. Any travel on an arterial street comes with certain exposures. However, it's worth noting that in order to access the site from 75th Avenue, you would still have to make a left turn at the signalized intersection of 75th Avenue and Paradise. To access the site from 75th Avenue at the access point south of Paradise, you have to make a left turn as well. So whether you're making a left turn at an unsignalized location or a left turn at a signalized location, it's really something that's difficult to assess that exposure and the risk. However, I can say that we do have a number of run red crashes. We do have a number of failure to yields from left turners. So that type of crash could occur at either location, approximately equal probability.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go away yet, Mr. Forey. Did you have a question? Councilmember Hunt?
I have several questions, but I'll start with you.
Sure thing.
Since you're there. Is there no consideration to put a light there? Would it be too close to the light at Paradise? It just isn't done in traffic circles.
Mayor and council, you're absolutely correct. That location south of Paradise is far too close to be considered an appropriate location for a traffic signal.
Well, I have to say, I am bothered by this. It would not be enough, I guess, to give me a negative vote, but I am very bothered by this. I know from working with David and Joan, and even being at things at their house and having to leave, that you really have to wait your turn to turn left or right out of their subdivision. It's hard now, and I can only imagine what it would be with that additional traffic. I'm glad I'm not a traffic engineer because I see your conundrum, but nevertheless, I am bothered by this. This question is not for you, but I don't think you should probably go very far away.
Please don't.
Chris, do you know, does anybody know, where is the closest grocery store to this location? Actual grocery store?
Mayor, council, the closest grocery store, I think Target has some groceries there. I'm trying to think. There you go, you heard that.
I'm sorry, what? 75th and Thunderbird?
75th and Thunderbird.
So that's, oh, 67th and Bell would just be 1 mile. Okay. Is that a good big grocery store, of Fry's or something? Okay. And then what is the closest elementary school at this time? Paseo Verde, and how are they in terms of their population right now? I know our schools in the south are not overcrowded, but I know the farther north you go, they are overcrowded. And I'm glad PUSD always makes allowances and kind of does a good deal with the, the developer does with PUSD. But is Paseo Verde already overcrowded, or is it not, or?
Mayor, Councilmember Hunt, of course, the district is always part of the review process. What I can note is that they did not provide any information that this would create any capacity challenges for the district. What they did identify is that there was as I indicated earlier, a voluntary assistance agreement that was done in conjunction with the developer.
Okay, and then same question, but high schools. What is the high school there? Is it Liberty?
Centennial High School.
I'm sorry?
They're zoned for Centennial.
Oh, Centennial. And what's Centennial's population? How are they? Do we know?
Mayor, Councilmember Hunt, they didn't address that one specifically. They addressed development as its impact on its school systems. And with either regard, they didn't identify a capacity issue.
Okay, so I guess I don't get answers. I guess I'm more interested. I have a hand in the back there. Somebody's waving, probably has an answer.
I have a question in regards to the city's readiness for a multi-story fire.
Okay, you're going to have to wait and fill out
Who
a
is that? I'm sorry.
questionnaire. I thought he wanted to answer how many students there were. Okay, well, I do have these concerns about the impact on the neighborhood, but by the same token, I know that rooftops bring people to use the entertainment district and to fill the ball stadium and do the other things that we want. So, one other question. Are the trees eucalyptus trees? Is that the, that seems an easy enough thing for them to change. Eucalyptus trees are terrible. They break, they're dirty. In a windstorm, they lose branches, they're dangerous. And to put that in an apartment complex is ludicrous. So if you can make my comment known on that, and that's an easy thing for them to choose a better tree. I don't know where they're from, if they're from Arizona, if they're developers from Arizona or what, but it's a terrible tree for Arizona for sure.
Councilmember Hunt. I believe that was the tree shown on the conceptual landscape plan, but as you indicated, those kinds of things can change. It is a local developer, and they are here, and if we have any questions, they certainly would probably like an
they here
opportunity to
tonight, you
refute
mean?
or answer questions as well.
Are they here tonight, you mean?
Yes, ma'am, they are.
Oh, hi. Okay, well, he's heard. He doesn't have to answer me, but he's heard the concerns, so that's good. Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thank you, and I'm sure that our developer will want to consider that we are in a drought and will want to put in xeriscape, as beautiful as that can be. Mr. Forey, before you leave, I do want to talk to you some more about traffic. It seems to be a very big issue, and people are very worried about it. So can you give me an idea about how the traffic study was done, and what time of year or when that was done, and why you believe that that the traffic study is safe?
Mayor and Council, thank you for that question. It's a valid question. In fact, when the effects of COVID first started hitting, we saw the impacts on traffic. We very quickly issued a memorandum stating to our traffic engineers that were performing studies that we would not be accepting new traffic counts during COVID conditions. So many of the studies we looked at on a case-by-case basis as to what could be used, most often historic counts that had been collected by the city of Peoria itself, or our consultants. In the case of this traffic study, there had been a prior traffic study when the site was zoned as a hotel, and those earlier counts were used for this traffic study. So the counts that we do have, I believe, were from 2017. I'm not exactly certain on that date, but I do believe they're from 2017.
Okay.
That's a long time.
I would like to request that we do a study to put a light in at Terra Buena. And the reason that I'm saying that is because the impact downstream of this development seems to be of great concern also. And if we already have a neighborhood that is having trouble getting in and out, I'd like us to at least take a strong, hard look at that and see if we can remedy that, no matter what happens here tonight.
And Mayor and Council, thank you very much for that request. Actually, after the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, we had heard those concerns from residents, and we have added that location to our list of intersections to study for traffic signal warrants in the next fiscal year.
Good, thank you for that. And I want to clarify another thing. I have heard that we don't normally allow traffic to go in and out onto what is a busy road, a arterial road. And I believe that we do that on 83rd Avenue, we do it on Bell Road, we do it in a lot of places. Is that correct or not?
Mayor and Council, that is correct. It's very common to see access to all street frontages. You may not see multiple access points, but it is certainly not atypical to have direct access to an arterial. In fact, in many cases, it's preferred depending on the use.
And so this access onto 75th Avenue, is it going to be right in and right out?
Mayor and Council, this will be a full access driveway based on the traffic study with the assessment done through a level of service assessment, and that's where it's an evaluation not of safety per se, but of the measure of delay anticipated at the intersection or driveway access. And all movements at this location showed it would have an acceptable level of service based on the city's criteria. So for that reason, there was no reason to restrict any of those movements.
Okay, so you just said it was based on traffic flow and not necessarily safety.
There's not a direct assessment of safety. We use the level of service as our proxy, as our best estimate. However, if the city does identify a location that's particularly problematic through safety assessments, we would certainly reevaluate any locations.
Okay, could I ask that reevaluation is done as a stipulation of what occurs tonight when we talk about that right in and right out, or that assessment from a standpoint of safety for the 75th Avenue access?
Mayor and Council, thank you for your question. However, I'll have to defer to Mr. Hawkes as to the procedural emphasis and elements of that question.
Mayor and Council, if it was the will of the council, I'm sure we could add a stipulation that required a final traffic impact analysis at the time of site plan and to specifically study the 75th Avenue entrance point, ingress, egress point.
Ingress, egress, and impact on the southern portion of 75th
Correct.
Avenue, downstream.
Downstream, yep.
Downstream. All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councilmember Hunt?
Excuse me, did I understand you to say that this traffic study was 2017?
Mayor, Councilmember Hunt, I may be mistaken the date of the counts. I would have to verify, but it was prior
That's
to
5 years.
COVID.
If my math is serving me, that's 5 years. That's old data, really old data. And I would say there are many more cars going through there now than there were 5 years ago. May I make a suggestion?
Yes.
I mean, are we at that point, or does Bridget want to talk or something?
Oh, sorry. Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to say that I think, just in hearing the conversation about the flow of traffic, the number of cars versus safety and all that, I think just based on the dated information, that I definitely support doing a current evaluation of the traffic flow. Based on what the mayor requested. I think that's necessary. So if that's a stipulation of this project, I support that. I do want to speak to the project of itself, if I may. So, and you know, I'm looking at the big picture for P83 and the process and how the land use designation is determined. And everything I'm seeing, if I'm being objective and I'm looking at this project, it's a quality mixed-use project that fits the land use designation. Somebody had mentioned about, no more apartments, and I'm sorry about, how misinformation, makes its way to the surface. However that happens, I'm really sorry that happened. I don't see how we can say that there would be no more multifamily housing projects in that area because of the end goal to create a mixed-use development there where that does offer a variety of housing options to draw the type of commercial establishments that we want, the placemaking, the social experiences, the connectivity, all of that. We need to be able to have a variety of housing options, and the data shows, we've seen that recently, that Peoria is very limited on those options, and that is a hub in Peoria for commercial development and job creation. I think what's changed is when we talked about this many years ago, the businesses were coming first. Ideally, we were bringing commercial job creation first, and I think there's maybe a shift in that those industries, high-wage jobs, they're looking for options. And so based on everything that we've talked about, the designated land use, this project really does meet that criteria. I think it's really difficult to undo that at this point with this project. We can't undo that designation at this point. And so I see it as a quality project. I have one question as it relates, and the situation with the trees, and I think those are things the developer needs to be considerate of. We've heard that loud and clear. The landscaping, evaluating those view areas at the top of that building. Did I understand that there is a pool on the top level? No, so there's no pool up there, okay.
Bottom level, yep, ground floor.
That's on the ground floor,
Correct.
okay, I thought maybe there were two, but anyways, and the mixed use with the retail, it does seem small. I see that as a start because that is kind of the urban feel that we're going for in that area, and that, landing on that type of development in that area has been a long time coming. But I do think, I do appreciate the concerns of the residents. I think we need to consider all of that. I'm looking for some reason why this is a bad project. The structure itself seems like a quality project to me and meets the criteria of the land use designation. And I think that's a reality here. As far as that traffic goes, though, that is a real concern. Safety is our #1 priority. If there are additional steps that we can take to ensure that we've exhausted every possibility of creating a safe ingress and egress for that project, we need to do it. We need to make sure that we do it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I appreciate all the comments. I do want to say, I do believe we owe the opportunity to the applicant to address some of these concerns and address the council. They are here this evening, and I'm sure they would like to make some remarks as well.
Wonderful.
Someone's phone is up here. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Benjamin Tate with Withy Morris, 2525 East Arizona Biltmore Circle, on behalf of the applicant Sub 4 Development. I'm delighted to be here this evening to talk to you about this project, Converge at P83. We're really excited about this project. I've got a presentation prepared. Would the council like to hear my full presentation or simply respond to some of the questions and concerns that we've heard so far? Because I'm happy to do either.
I think we would prefer to hear you respond.
Understood. Thank you. So I made some notes here, so I'll try to go in order. But I think at the top, and Councilmember Binsbacher, I think, said it best. When Sub 4 first came to us about this project and about this piece of land, obviously we were very excited about it because it does sit on the east end of the Peoria Sports Complex urban design, and it's kind of the final puzzle piece of this eastern bookend of P83 and deserves a really high quality project, one that gets special attention in the way of architecture and design and development. And I think the architects on this, LCM architects, have done an incredible job of providing a really high quality mixed-use multifamily development. But it's important to understand the genesis of where that came from. And the genesis of this project was the plans that this body has passed over a period of years, that being the general plan just recently in this last election cycle, and then before that, the Peoria Sports Complex urban design plan, which really dictates what the city wants in this area. And it's important to note on top of that, I think we've done, and the architects in particular have done a really phenomenal job of laying out this site in a way, again, with input from your phenomenal city staff, in terms of the land use and the breakup and the way that the site works is really, really great. But I think it's important to note, there's some talk about this project being excessive. And I would actually say that it's the opposite of that. If you look at what the Peoria Sports Complex urban design plan calls for at this site, it encourages up to 10 stories. It talks about tall buildings. It talks about high density. We're proposing 5 stories. It encourages up to 10. In terms of height, we're 60 feet for about 95 to 98% of this development. The only part of this project that goes above that is that architectural point of the roof that's on the corner. And beyond that, the vast majority of this project aligns with every other development that's been approved at this site. And talking about every other development that's been approved at this site, there was a comment about somebody is going to come along and develop this site. Well, I guess for one, we're here. We made it. Here we are. But on top of that, there have been 2 other projects approved at this site since 2007, and neither one of those have developed. And I think that's really indicative of the type of land use that's appropriate for this site. So at first, it was a mixed-use office commercial development. That didn't happen. In 2018, it became a dual-flag hotel development, and that didn't happen. It's because this is a really challenging site to develop. We've got a wash on the west side, we've got an even bigger wash on the south side, and we're hemmed in by 2 streets on the north and the east sides. On a site that's about 3.3 acres, and that really limits what you can do in terms of viable land uses. So using those city plans as a guidepost, that was really the guiding factors in the way that this project was designed and developed. And I think that's the most important point of all of this, and that's why we come to you with the staff recommendation of approval and a unanimous approval or recommendation of approval from your Planning and Zoning Commission. I've got a few more things I wanted to make sure that I respond to, the most important of which is this driveway on 75th and Paradise Lane. This has been very much the focus of the discussion, and pardon my pun, but it's really been driving the discussion. I looked very closely at the traffic study, again, because I wanted to be prepared and make sure that I came to you with all of the information about the true impact of this driveway. And I think what's important to point out is that the driveway on 75th and Paradise Lane, and actually, sorry, let me back up. We are expected to generate, at the busiest AM hour, 68 trips. And at the busiest PM hour, 93 trips. And what that breaks down to is we're adding over 1 car a minute to Paradise Lane into 75th Avenue. If you think about that in the context of how many cars are on both of those roads, you wouldn't even be able to tell the difference. And in the busier hour, in the PM hour, 93 trips, that's combining in and out. That's an average of about 1.5 cars per minute. So again, an almost negligible increase in traffic. But even if you boil that down more specifically to what's happening at that driveway at 75th and Paradise Lane, I understand that the main concern of the residents that live south of here are the cars that are going to be coming from our project, moving south on Paradise Lane, on 75th Avenue. At the busiest hour of the AM, we will be adding 17 cars from that driveway to 75th Avenue. So that's about 1 car every 3.5 minutes over what's there right now. I would challenge anybody to be able to tell the difference between what's there right now and what will be there with an additional 1 car every 3.5 minutes. And I think your traffic engineer made a really important point, which is whether this driveway is there or not, that same number of trips is going to come down 75th Avenue. It's just a matter of where they move to. If we eliminate that driveway, all of those trips are going to have to come out onto Paradise Lane and then make another turning movement and go south on 75th Avenue. As he pointed out, it doesn't do anything to improve traffic on 75th Avenue, but what it does is it's to the detriment of the circulation on site. And so I would say don't take my word for it. Listen to the engineers who are paid by taxpayer dollars. They're the experts. I don't pretend to be an expert in traffic engineering. But they clearly know what they're talking about, and whether it's our traffic engineer or their traffic engineer, because we prepare a report, but ultimately that report has to be approved by your traffic department as well. And so thinking about it in terms of safety, thinking about it in terms of the actual impact of trips coming in and out of the site on a daily basis, there was a comment by Councilmember Hunt about this data being old, and you're right, and because of COVID, it's created challenges for traffic engineers, and this is not unique to Peoria. In every city we go into right now, there's challenges in making sure that we're accurately analyzing traffic data. Some cities have added just an arbitrary percentage to the counts that they get. There's an added 20% to the traffic counts. Other cities have been more selective about the data that they use to base it on. But what we're talking about here is the trip generation from this site, which is something separate and independent from the data that we get about the volume of trips that are on these streets right now. So there's the analysis of the trips that, we're using data from 2017 to analyze from that perspective. And then there's our projection of trip estimation. How many cars are we adding to the street, both on 75th Avenue and on Paradise Lane? And that number doesn't change based on COVID, because it's based upon data that's been collected over decades of what you can expect with any particular type of land use. And that's an even more important point, because I just came across this issue last week with another multifamily project I'm doing in another part of town. And it had to do with the accuracy of the trip generation data that comes from the International Traffic Engineers 10th edition manual, which is where all of this generation data comes from as far as estimating how many trips we're going to generate. And so I wanted to arm myself with additional data to sort of justify and protect the accuracy of the data in the trip generation manual. And what I found is that there was actually a local consulting firm here in Arizona that took the trip generation manual. They looked at the number of trips they expected particular residential developments to generate, and then they actually went out and took field data and looked at how many trips each of those developments generated relative to what was expected from the trip generation manual. And what they found is that categorically, the trip generation manual is actually overestimating the number of trips specific to residential uses that the manual projects. And the reason for that is that the data in the trip generation manual is old, starts in 2017 and only goes backwards from there. So it doesn't account for the changes in online shopping, virtual meetings, flexibility in terms of work schedules, all of these technological advances that are actually reducing the incentives for people to drive more. And so if anything, I would say that based on the analysis that this company did, the number of trips that we're estimating is actually higher than what the development will actually generate. I'm sorry, that was a very long diatribe. So I'll pause there and answer any questions.
Council, are there any questions for the developer? All right. Thank you.
And I apologize, I made myself a note, and I still forgot, when I addressed mayor and council, I forgot to acknowledge Council Youth Liaison Fierro and Rodriguez. Thank you for being here. Service is wonderful at that age. Thank you.
Okay. I thank you for all of that information, Mr. Hawkes, Mr. Forey. I think that I would like to say one thing, because I have this right in front of me. It is the Sports Complex Urban Design Plan. It was ratified by the City Council, who sat at this dais in 2010. It specifically talks about, this plan identifies the site within the East End, which is intended to facilitate mixed-use development up to 10 stories in height. The plan also calls for maximum setbacks from the right-of-way to move buildings closer to the street and reinforce the intended urban character for the area. It goes on to talk about pedestrian-friendly environment and the urban character. And looking at this development, it falls completely under the definition that we as a council put in place for this area. They've done everything that we asked them to do. So with that in mind, I would like to take a motion on this, but I would like to include the stipulations that we discussed that have to do with the traffic study with regards to the safety on 75th Avenue and with regards to a light at Terra Buena and the necessity and or warranting of those things or anything else that is impacted to the south of this project.
Mayor and council, so when you do take an action, if it's the will of the council to offer another stipulation, I did write some language together, put some language here pretty quickly, and the way it would read would be, the developer shall provide and obtain approval of a final traffic impact analysis at the time of site plan review with specific emphasis on the 75th Avenue driveway relative to traffic movements and safety. Does that encapsulate what you're referring to there?
And then the light at Terra Buena.
Okay.
A study of that happening or possibly being necessary for safety purposes. All right, so that being said, no further discussion. I will take a motion on item, where are we, 42R, to include those stipulations. Council.
I need a clarification first.
Yes, please.
When you said a stipulation on the traffic, what are we exactly voting on tonight? Are we voting to approve the entire project as is?
With the stipulation of the traffic study being done.
But we can't take this back, so it doesn't really matter what the traffic study is.
Okay, so how does that work? Mr. Tyne, do you want to answer that? When you vote on things with stipulations, I mean, it happens all the time. How does that
Right,
work?
so this would be the time that we would place a stipulation would be at this point. I think the question we have is subsequent, if we find that there is something that is of concern from a traffic safety standpoint, what remedies do we have at that point, Mr. Hawkins?
Mayor, council members, so what the traffic study is going to do, the final traffic report, and I should note in your packet, Exhibit 2, with the conditions of approval, we already have a stipulation that calls for a final traffic impact analysis with a site plan submittal. We're just adding areas of emphasis, right, to conclude the things you talked about. So what would happen is that traffic study would be prepared relative to this project, and there are a series of recommendations that are made. And so the expectation would be that those recommendations then are implemented as part of any site plan action that occurs.
So in other words, if the traffic study does not prove that this can safely happen, it can't be built.
Mayor, council, more directly, so the traffic impact analysis is going to study these things you're asking for, and also make some recommendations. It might make recommendations on turning restrictions or other things. And so those restrictions, those recommendations are going to be outlined in that traffic study. So as we're looking at the site plan, the expectation would be that whatever the traffic analysis, along with our professional traffic engineering team, whatever those recommendations are, they would be enacted as any part of any site plan approval or review that we do.
So they would be
They'd be
an
part of the case.
obligation of the
Correct.
developer.
That's right.
They become an obligation, that those safety things that have to be put in place from the results of the traffic analysis.
And if they don't, then what?
Then our city does not approve that for
Okay,
development.
then it would come back for reapproval. Okay.
Or more specifically, that we wouldn't be in a position to approve the site plan. So it would have to, the site plan would have to be in alignment with all of the conditions of approval if the council took action on the zoning case.
Okay. So we need a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Council, please vote. And it passes unanimously, and it appears Councilmember Dunn is not here any longer. So it passes unanimously with her absence. Thank you. And thank you all for your interaction. All right, we will now move on to reports from the city manager. Mr. Tyne.
Great, thank you, Mayor and Council. Just one last final item, and that is a 30-second video that features the upcoming Somos Peoria event, which is scheduled September 25th here in the Old Town area. And so we'll just air that real quickly and
Thank you.
illustrate that.
That looks fun.
Thank
Let's
you.
go there.
It was, and we will be airing that obviously on the cable network. Thank you.
Thank you. And I neglected to call for members of the public who would wish to speak on non-agenda items. I have not received any speaker request forms, so I assume that there is no request to speak. And so with that, I would just like to again thank our new Youth Council liaisons. Thank you very much for being here, and we look forward to working with you for the remainder of your school year. And with that, we are adjourned.